Channelnge Middle School student as she leads us in the pledge. Moving along on our agenda, item number 2, the annual board planning process. Superintendent Brown.
So this is meeting number 13 tonight, opening on of the year. Tonight is a big discussion around the working budget of the year. We finally have the data we need to be able to plan ahead with detail. We also have the tax discussion, annual investment report, and a number of financial items. In the beginning, we'll be hearing from some of the power work going on here about middle school as we continue to increase students' well-being and sense of belonging as they return to school at normalcy. Over the next few months, we'll be at Bloomfield Elementary School in October, Bloomfield Boston School in November, and New Haven School in December. I think it's also, those of you that were here 2 weeks ago at Naval Construction, we'll be hearing some of that conversation around next-gen skills continue to surface up tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Brown. Moving into item number 3, behind people, place, and purpose, Ms. Hayes.
So I have here with me 3 Open Home students. We have Maya Colley. She is in the Talbot House, and she's a creative hub. We have Annie Moosey on the end here. She's in Morehouse. She's in the Sunshine Squad. We have Colin Hull, who is in the Spalding House, and he is in Ice Cat. And so to kind of back up a little bit, they're going to be sharing with you one of their favorite experiences at Old Kentucky Home, where they really dive into that initial belonging and welcome piece. But before they do that, I just wanted to share some of the data from, we of course don't have this year's data, but we do have last year's data. The students had to do a questionnaire, a survey, before they started their KSA testing. And one of the questions, my school is a caring place. 95% of students agree or strongly agree. Adults from my school care about me, 94 agree or strongly agree. And there's at least one adult from my school who listens to me when I have something to say, and 96% agree or strongly agree. So I think that speaks to one of the things that Mr. Dickerson had asked about previously, like how do we know? And so this bit of data from year before last helps support that the work that architect leaders like Ms. Reynolds at Kentucky Home are doing with the houses and caring homes. So I'm going to turn it over to these guys. They have a little something for you guys to do this evening.
So you're in 5th grade, going into 6th grade. You come to OKH and you get inducted into houses in your hearing aids. And we're going to be inducted in all of them. And if you can, whenever we say your name, please raise your hand.
about at OKH is team building. So we're going to let you guys experience some of what we do. We're going to play a little game called You Can Huff and Puff, but You Can't Blow My House Away. So you're going to have 2 minutes to create a structure for a marshmallow. And you will have 1 marshmallow, 5 toothpicks, 2 straws, 1 pair of scissors, a piece of string, a piece of paper, a styrofoam cup, and a styrofoam plate to create your structure. You can use only the materials in your container, and you do not have to use all of them if you don't want to. Once the time stops, you will stop creating and your shelter will be tested. So when your time is up, you'll be tested with a little fan, also known as our little wildcat here, to see if your structure is stable and can withstand the wind. If you could please move next to your fellow house member so that you guys can work together to create the structure. So just work your house with so you guys can create any structures, material. A couple things as well. Please do not puncture your marshmallow because it represents a student here at OKH and we're care for our students. And also, when you are being tested with the wind, marshmallow cannot be seen by the wind. So if the wind knocks over part of your structure and the marshmallow is seen, sadly your structure is not up to par.
Are you all ready?
And you don't have to use all the materials. Seconds left. Five, four, three, two, one. Okay, so now we're going to test your structures. 1, they are very safe. So when we make one, we have a good example like this.
Alright, so I just want to say thank you for allowing us to present today, and thank you very much for allowing leadership classes and parent minutes in the Nelson County Schools District. But my colleague has something else to say to y'all.
Also, there is an open invitation in your gift bags if you would like to visit any of our Family Fridays. It's from 8:20 to 8:45 in the mornings, and we would love to see you there.
Thank you. Good. School thing that Mr. Dickinson taught. Mr. Owen, second that, all in favor? Thank you all. We appreciate it. I mean, it really shows that the house structure not only is about finding a place to belong, also in a case like this, being able to work cooperatively with the other housemates to come up with solutions. We appreciate your all for your Thank you for sharing, and thank you for conducting us. So does this mean that whenever we come to conduct anything we need to say, so I'm more than happy to do it? Okay. Good. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item 4, student and stakeholder support, or engagement, I should say, public comments. So the yes comment policy, we would like to thank you for attending our Nelson County School Board meeting, and any person wishing to address the board may do so by following these rules. Individuals representing themselves are limited to 3 minutes. Individuals representing a group are limited to 5 minutes. Please step forward. We would ask that you state your name and address, and if you represent a group, state the name of the group you are representing. I've got a list here of 6 folks that have signed up. It looks like all of them indicate themselves. Except Sheriff. There we go. So we'll start out here with, is it Kelly Boynton? Did I pronounce that correctly? Boynton. Name and address, and whether it's a group or self, it looks like a self.
Kelly Warrington, my address is 113 Willow Drive, Youngstown, and I represent myself. I'm only here mostly regarding the property tax, and I just really want to know why does the burden on us fall on us to raise taxes? I mean, there's always something nicer and shinier, and school is sort of the same song and dance, and more money, more money, more money. We have so much funding. Why do we continue to raise property tax? I know we didn't raise it once because appraisals went sky high, so we're going to need more money the one time we didn't raise property taxes. So if we want to continue to raise property taxes, the burden is on everybody. And people think that if you own a house, the burden is on you. It's not. I have rental property and the taxes go up, so people that are struggling already are going to pay higher rent, inflation. It's just a never-ending cycle. At some point, we just have to say, we're going to stop raising taxes. That's all I have. Thank you.
Next on the sign is Courtney Hinton.
Good evening, my name is Courtney Hinton. I am a 8017 Road. I'm in the Schematic district. Before you have this here, this is enrollment and retention data for the high schools for the past several years. The raw data was provided by the board office. Plotted in passes you'll notice that the current freshman class is applauded since it was last Monday for this year. As you can see, each class as it progresses through school generally shows a decline in enrollment. The years shown represent 1,556 freshmen entering for those 4 classes. During their matriculation, we lost 175 students. That's more than 11% of that population. The respective retention rates for these 4 classes are shown to the right of the enrollment charts. By the time our freshmen get to their senior year, their cohorts, at the most part, retain less than 90%. And this is already below the statewide 4-year graduation rate. I show opinions from the board members. I'm curious if you've seen this data presented this way.
This is not retention data, but you can continue to speak.
Whether you have or have not seen this data this way, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And if you aren't managing it, you're leaving seed dollars on the table every year. Those 175 students that I mentioned that we've lost over the last 4 years across 7 high schools represent 356 FTE we didn't get annual seed payments on. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've been to a handful of board meetings so far and reviewed many of the previous meetings' agendas, and I've yet to see any evidence that the outcomes this board is monitoring and holding the school district and its administrative team accountable for. Highlighting learning programs and celebrating our district's successes is important, it's critical and necessary. But when you get to the brass tacks, monitoring literacy rates, retention rates, test scores, etc. Tying this back to the agenda related to the tax discussion, I'm not opposed to making sure the school district is properly funded to give excellent education to my kids. Unfortunately, empirical data can show that this really isn't happening right now. And if you aren't measuring it and not managing it, then I'm reluctant to pay more for it. And that's what tonight's tax proposal is asking me to do. And your people in your district can go the same as I do. Thank you.
So the data that's provided was not retention data, just for the record. It was enrollment data in that cohort. This is not retention data, just to clarify.
And I provided that kind of analysis to actually have value to the data.
So it's when you make that superintendent revenue, this is where maybe another board knows the answer, because I'm trying to figure out what year is what. And if I'm looking at the green line, which is for this past spring's graduating class, when they were sophomores, that would have been the beginning of the pandemic cycle.
So this is, to be clear, enrollment's up in both of our high schools right now from 4 years ago. Enrollment's up in every school in the district from 4 years ago, except 3.
But am I not going to understand
So
that?
the issue with this, using this as retention data, is this isn't tracking the kid, it's tracking enrollment. So for example, some of these kids are going back and forth between Nelson County and Wisconsin High School. You're still retaining the kid as in a transition. Other students may be in the academy, right? Those are all students that are retained into the system. That's why this data is flawed data. We did not provide retention data, but we can provide retention data. That was not always asked for. We're asking enrollment data. I just want to clarify that because I can't have people using data that is misinformed.
But if this was an attempt to show loss of students, if I'm looking again at the green line, which is class of 2022, which is the class that just graduated in the spring of 22, which means in junior year they were at Nelson County High School, for example, they were spring of 21, and so then a sophomore to the spring of 20, which is when the pandemic hit. At that time, when all schools closed to in-person instruction, there was also a number of families that then also decided to unenroll students possibly.
There was a little bit of that, not much.
So then, even looking at there being this dramatic green
It's not the intention of it.
Okay.
So,
I just want to make sure that I had to do this correctly. That was like,
Okay, my point is, this is just a comment section. I didn't know we could make a comment that.
well, I also can't have people getting up in the comment section reporting information that is false. This is false information.
Well, it may be, but it's just a comment.
I'm just wanting to
And
make
I'm
sure I'm
just
up to
sorry,
date.
you know, I just didn't think we made comments about the comment.
Our reality is there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that's what asked me yesterday about New Haven School Club, just as an example. We've been talking for a year and a half about New Haven School, committing to the future of New Haven School. But that's the narrative. This is another narrative. It's a false narrative about retention. Our enrollment's up in every school in the county except 3.
I understand that, but my point being, it's just a comment section.
Yeah.
And to me, you're giving the right for a parent or a person just to make a comment.
Right.
And if we know it's not true or we know it's true, that's their right to get up here and just make a comment section. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with that.
There's been plenty of things that's been said up here
That's
that
right.
I would have liked to have said that is not correct. And I just don't feel like it's time to say that's not correct when it's supposed to just be common.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
And my question was just to be clarification. Moving on to the next guest comment, Kenny Phillips.
My name's Katie Phillips. I live at 1545 Phelps Lane, Boston. And all this stuff that's coming up with the taxes, the main thing is that I don't know exactly what it's all about. I didn't know what I heard. The current tax rate is 70.3 or 4 or something like that. And we're proposing a 4% tax, a possible 4% tax increase. Well, I'm on a fixed income. And I'm barely making it. When EPA raised my property tax, it went from 105,000 to 182,000. Now, where did all that money go? You all got the difference between 105 and 182. You did? How can you explain it? If my property value went up to 182,000 from 105, that difference right there, you all got 70.3%. 70.4%. It's an increase. It has to be. If you didn't, then I'd be talking to the sheriff's office to find out where the money went to. Because you all got that money. And I'm telling you right now that my escrow account is running in the negative all the time. Every year, my escrow is more than my principal and my interest together. Simply because of the tax increase and everything else. And when it went from 100 to 105 to 182, Farm Bureau every year, they jacked the rate up that says now that I'm living in a house for $182,000. So I can't afford it. I'm over my head right now. I can't even go out and do something. I mean, Social Security tells me that I can go out and make this much money. The doctors that operate on my neck and my back and my knee and my shoulder and everything else tell me, you can't do that. If you do it, you're going to be in a wheelchair. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't afford it anymore. If you all jack the tax rate, I'm going to have to sell out and try to find someplace else because I can't afford it. And that's a daggone shame that you have to do that because of tax rates. I understand that school is very important. I've got 2 grandchildren here in Kentucky and in Nelson County. I've got 2 of them in Louisiana. And I understand that their education is top priority. But also I think that there's a whole lot of cutting that can be done somewhere besides their education and putting the burden back on me to pay for this, whatever it is that you want to do. 70 or that 4% interest, that 4% will put me underwater. 20%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Next is Daniel Greenfield.
Hello, thank you, it's been a while since I've been here with you guys. I just wanted to talk to y'all. The last time I talked to y'all, y'all pretty ambitious on the projects y'all got in the pipeline. And inflation should be guided through where it's going to take these projects to the roof. Just think like concrete. I got 2 increases on that last year, $5 and $8 a yard. So you think, well, maybe it will be. Guess what? I'm going to let it in my office right now. January 1st. Concrete's going up. I got orders from asphalt. Since you got this asphalt on the project like I'm going to make it definitely high since it's ever been. I don't have to hold on to me for that, because that goes down. So all these projects y'all got, y'all think it's going to be done at this low price, not even low price, but it's going up considerably since y'all started y'all's projects that y'all have in mind. So you would probably have to get to the point where you have to pick a project. All right, and I hope that you keep New Haven in mind, because New Haven is desperately in the school down that way. And so I prefer to have a new school, because we're not going to get that, but at least we've got to make sure we get that school taken care of. And while you're taking care of that school, keep in mind that school was built in the 1950s, early 60s. You probably got some red base paint in there, you probably got some asbestos in there. Do a lot of testing, make sure that stuff's under control, don't get that stuff up in there on the children down there in that school. Because that's a big deal. It's a big time health hazard. You may have, I know you have other projects with other schools that need updated and maintenance done as well. Y'all need to make sure the decisions y'all make today, the increases that you're going to have in the inflationary environment that we're in, not only in material costs, but your interest rates are going up. I'm sure your bond rate, the cost of your bonds are going to go up. So you're going to have a higher carrying cost on top of this. So make sure the decisions y'all make today don't burden the school boards up tomorrow having to increase the rates, because when they want to a month, the project's going way over the budget, and your carrying cost is more than what you thought it was going to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is Deborah Colchester.
Good evening, Deborah Bohachevsky, 658 Orange Lane, Bloomfield, Kentucky. Just a quick note, I did see a couple people that came in after the sign-up sheet was removed, so if you could possibly ask for additional comments at the end, that would be appreciated. 5:30 is to get here for everybody on time. Taxes, we're all here, well, a lot of new faces are here tonight because of taxes. It's almost the most contested word at the central office behind Bloomfield Middle School. Speaking of Bloomfield Middle School, how many of you are aware that the band instructor, T.J. Metcalf, was the 4th District Middle School Teacher of the Year? And he's also in the running to be State Music Middle School Teacher of the Year. I think that's quite an accomplishment for TJ and the Bloomfield Middle School. Back to taxes. We've been repeatedly told that the Nelson County school tax is so high because we are at the bottom 5% of state-funded school districts in regards to SEEK funding. The SEEK funding legislature is 30 years old and in need of revamping. This reminds me of something of the saying, see something, say something, do something. Mrs. Hollingshead, I saw your letter in the Gazette, and you mentioned that you reached out to state representatives. Good for you. You're saying something, doing something. I'd be curious to know who you reached out to and if you got any response. That's important to show how they feel about their constituents. Superintendent Bradley, you've been in your position for 4 years now. You've mentioned SEEK funding several times, and you certainly see something and say something and you do something. You're very well connected with Representative Chad McCoy and Senator Jim Hickman. In fact, Chad McCoy gave you a letter recommendation for this position. He's obviously quite powerful that he was able to change the funding platform for charter schools. So I'm wondering if you had a discussion with him as far as changing the format for seat funding and if anything was accomplished with that. Mr. Jackie, you worked for Frankfurt in Frankfurt for the PDE for several years. Do they not see the problem with the seat funding? I know, gosh, they should certainly have some lobbying power. You're obviously well connected and made other problems go away. So I'm wondering, 13 years as a board member, what have you done to solve this problem?
Thank you, Ms. Bowden.
See something, say something, do something. Thank you.
Next speaker, Brandon Penroy.
I don't think I need a mic. I got a good thing.
If you wouldn't mind, it just takes a while.
I'm Raymond Penroy from Nelson County Sheriff. As one of my duties, I collect the taxes. So starting October 1st, we'll meet judges like him who's going to come right around me for tax rates. The county's grown so much that fiscal court lowered the tax rate, and it's going to collect over $1 million more than it did the previous year. So will the Nelson County School Library. They lowered their tax rate and will collect just about the same or if not more on their taxes. So I'm not going to be the big voice on the taxes. I collect them, it's my job, but at the end of the day, I'm going to get the brunt of the decisions that other people make. Two, I would ask the school board a favor. You're setting the tax rate on September the 20th. I would request at the beginning of September, so we have time to print out all the tax bills for our Nelson County residents. If not, I'm going to have to push it back, sending out the tax bills for November 1st, and it's going to put a bigger burden on our residents for Christmas and the holidays coming. So I would request that you guys bump up the taxes or the meeting to be prepared for it. Just be smart. I know you guys got a hard decision, like I do, on certain things. But every year that the taxes go up, or the taxes come in, they don't fix income, and then we have to try to fix it, and there is no fix it. So, thank you for your time.
The last person on this, and I apologize, I see Dawn, but I'm not sure of the last name. Dawn Thrasher, right?
Your wife, kind of your
Mr. Thrasher, good name and address, and I think it says selfie.
Yeah, my name is John Thrasher. And I'm here to talk about taxes. I feel, anybody remember the comparison of things I've been all over again? Well, last year I was here saying the same thing, deja vu all over. We are here, a lot of us are here because of overspending. A lot of us is talking about seed funding. But property values are going up. That's what causes seed funding to go down. So it's locally it's all off. That's what I was talking about. And I agree, seed is archaic. It was passed 2500 years ago. It didn't easily adjust. I've talked to several state senators about this whole issue. And I think they're going to address it because they're here to a lot of people right now. But let's talk about Nelson County. Board members are constantly inundated with shouldn't our kids have the best? Shouldn't we give them everything, that they need, the best of everything? Well, on the flip side of that, we have senior citizens in this county that can't afford property taxes. There's neighbors of mine that own former dairy farms. They are going to have to sell because of property taxes are so high. So I'm going to take 20 seconds out of my time right now to let the board think about those senior citizens. Nelson County has a high property tax rate compared to surrounding counties. I don't care what anyone tells you, what you try to tell you. Do the analysis, do the analysis. At the end of the day, we have an extremely high tax rate. Two-thirds of our tax rate comes from the school board. I'm not saying let's strip the schools of funding. What I'm saying is, you and me, we don't have enough money. What do? We cut back. We have to cut back. They keep spending over and over again. They take 4%. That needs to change soon. That's another thing that probably going to be legislation. Right now, when they up a tax rate up to 4%, they call it the compensating rate. That should be recalled. Because you know what? Some of these boards are not in control. And I'm telling you right now, I think Nelson County citizens look better. And I think it's time you guys think about, thank you. Right.
D, fundraising request. E, overnight out-of-state field trip request, which there are two, Bluefield Elementary Vega and Nelson High School dance team. F, shortened school days. D, waivers. These are actually typically, if I'm correctly, granted for students who have IEPs. And then we also have item G, annual donation. Do we have any questions on any of the items on the consent agenda? Okay, then I will need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Nicholson. Second by Ms. Bowen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving into 6A, Government Opportunity Community Partnership, Ms. Bowen.
Good evening. Tonight I come to you with a revised MOA with the Guthrie Opportunity Center. As we think about the great partnership that we have at Guthrie, one of the things that we really run the program around is the Office of Vocational Rehab. And over the end of the summer, they had some changes to their program that really allowed us to not expand and to grow with Guthrie in the way that we desire as a district and as a community. So with that, we want to have Ms. Hurst, who is leading work in collaboration with Guthrie, and Mr. Clayton Freeman to talk a little bit about their work at the Guthrie Opportunity Center.
I'm Clayton.
This is Clayton. I think the Guthrie Opportunity Center, the partnership with them is very important. Over the past year, students like Clayton and many, many more have got to experience a lot of new things and things that they enjoy. So I brought Clayton here tonight, which you all actually met before, him and some friends. But he's probably my most natural, willing talker. Is that true?
You.
So I think Clayton showcases what we love about the Go Center. Clayton, what do you like about going there and doing work with the Go Center?
To be honest, it's kind of really fun because it's fun.
It's really fun. Okay. Well, that's a good answer. It's fun to work.
Yeah.
What's fun about it?
It's fun to work, but I like usually one of my happiness is work at the other house and help out.
What are some of the things that you do there?
I usually cooking, cleaning, I think, snack.
Okay. I'm trying to think of some of the things Clayton has tables and chairs.
Yeah, tables and chairs.
Have you ever planted things?
Yeah. I forgot.
We actually went to the farm to table event this year, and we actually worked over the summer, all of us, didn't we? Yeah. And that's been up there, and some of his friends, and they planted every vegetable that's planted out there. So if you go out there and you see it, that's Clayton's work. He did a really good job, and he's found some things that he loves. Right? Why is work important to you? What do you feel, what's it going to give to you in the future?
Money.
What are you going to do with all that money?
Buy living homes.
Yes, thanks, Clayton.
So a question for you, and be honest, you can say whatever you want. What about Ms. Hurst? What's the best thing about Ms. Hurst being one of your leaders out there in Guthrie?
Oh, it's kind of fun.
So Ms. Hurst makes it fun?
Yeah, it's really fun. I beat her in basketball once, but she won me.
So then the thing that Miss Hurst was not that great at is basketball.
She is horrible.
Good to know. Thank you, Clayton. Appreciate it.
So as we think about really the strong partnership that we've created with Guthrie, the wonderful opportunities that our students are seeing, the wonderful instruction that we have happening there, we want to continue that work and setting down their foundation and their board rubrics. It's something they're committed to, something we're committed to. So tonight I'm just asking for your approval of that revised MOA to continue that partnership.
So can you talk through some of the changes now and the background behind that changes? Because recently, this last 6 weeks, there were some changes to the way billing could occur across the state to support the Guthrie Academic Center. We've also changed the way we think about Miss Hurst role. And we've had to rethink how we can be a better partner with them for the long term.
Sure, absolutely. So as we know, having workforce transition coordinators and working with our diverse learning students, we've had opportunity to have reimbursement from the Office of Vocational Rehab for some of those services in transition. When we think about the overall long term, they have more than cut the billable service hours in half. When you think about Guthrie being a nonprofit and really being committed financially to that program, it was something that when I found that out, when I first found that out, meeting with them and saying, how do we continue partnerships like this to think about the next 30 years and the impact we want for students in our community now? And really not having the constraint around this federal programs to limit the opportunity and access that our kids have here in the district. And really sitting down with them and really going through that has allowed us to not have financial burden on the Guthrie Opportunity Center, knowing that we want to continue to be committed to that program. So this is allowing our teachers, our leaders, to have access to that campus, the classroom that they built and created for us, all of the industries there at Guthrie. So this is a community partnership versus having them as a fiscal agent or a responsible party for that income salary.
Any board members have any questions?
Our conversation with Guthrie was, regardless of any type of their Medicaid reimbursement or whatnot, we know it's best for our kids to be in partnership with Guthrie. The ecosystem they have there is beyond anything we can create in our schools because of the resources. And as you saw with Clayton, having, other than basketball, he's doing a lot of other things that are really special to transition to adult life.
This is one of many examples where public schools truly do serve the needs of students like Clayton, and you do not find that anywhere else other than you have a good, strong partnership between that public school and a community partner like that.
Absolutely. When you think about diverse learning, I think that's one of the great things about uniting people, places in our community. We have to think about every kid and every kid's need and celebrating their story so that they are a contributing community member along the path that come in us into the schools and in the four walls of our classrooms.
The Guthrie Opportunity Center is a very unique asset that we have here. You do not find many programs like this in communities of this size, which is evidenced by other communities coming to see how successful. And even I remember the day that this was the last game, I think you would, while you enjoyed the entire day, I think you really enjoyed the time you spent out at the center. I remember him talking with several of the students that worked there for 3 months, I think it was. And he spent quite a bit of time asking them about their experience.
They're a great community partner. We're super grateful.
Although we do have to find out how to get resources to better basketball. So maybe Clayton can help us right. If we don't have any other questions or comments, then we would need a motion to approve the Guthrie Opportunity Community Partnership as presented. Motion by Ms. Berry.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hollingshead. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Moving into 6B, University of Kentucky Student Teaching Memorandum of Agreement.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to ask for your approval of a memorandum of agreement to do student teaching at the University of Kentucky. So I've been talking to you all over the last couple of months about us reaching out to additional colleges and universities to build relationships with them, to get students of their college or university into our district, to begin their student teaching, because it's a great way for us to recruit. This is the standard MOA that just allows them to come in and work with teachers inside of one of our schools to do their student teaching. So I'm just asking for your approval of that.
I read in the judgment of the school principal would be allowed in determining eligibility of the supervisor rules or questions. What's the preliminary outlook for principals to have teachers accessible or to be able to supervise this?
So the college or university comes in and meets with them, or they do a virtual and they sit down and go through what that person needs to complete throughout their student teaching. And then we also agree to allow that university to come in and bring somebody. Normally it's twice during student teaching, and they come in and work with whoever their mentor is and talk to the principal and get an update on how they're doing and whether or not they completed the things that come within that agreement.
So it's not mandatory that we have a teacher supervising the actual co-op.
In all cases, they're tied to a mentor.
Just remember, college doesn't teach you how to teach. It only gives you an opportunity in a class. It doesn't teach you how to teach. So the first experience is through teaching. So I'm all for it. I mean, it can only help us. It can help, like you said, it can help us improve you. That people have to come instead of just sitting back on my heels waiting until they feel what I'm saying. I'll hold it.
More than general question, not specific to detailed memorandum of agreement. Do we ever have any fall semester student teachers, or are they
We have this fall and
okay. Do we have any fall semester or not?
actually we have one wants to come to us immediately to all approve some pay agreement tonight.
So with that said, I think we need a motion to approve the University of Kentucky Student Teaching MOA as presented. Motion by Ms. Berry, second by Ms. Bowen, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. This next one here, I found a little bit interesting. I thought it was a typo at first, but I wanted something you might from you or something.
No, actually this is the same thing as the MOA for student teaching agreement with Western Governors University. I think Damon thought that I had accidentally tried Western Kentucky University and corrected that this is correct. They're an online university for teaching, and they reached out to us. We typically reach out to colleges that are in the state of Kentucky just because it's easier for us to recruit and get along with people from them. But they reached out to us because they have a participant who has family in the Nelson County area. And this lady currently lives in Texas. She wants to move back to the Nelson County area, and she would like to teach in Nelson County School, so she requested to do her student teaching here. So typically we reach out to them. This is the same agreement we would do with any other college. We provide a mentor inside the school. The principal is involved in picking that mentor and setting all of that up. And the only difference is they reached out to us because they are out of state.
So this is a scenario where someone wanted to come here so they can initiate the call.
Yes.
Any questions on this at all?
Okay. Okay. Each state, each direction, each state has different hours that you can meet to be able to teach in that state. So is there any kind of regulation different than what we normally?
The only difference is in the state of Texas, they have to do 60 days here, they have to do 70
What's the maximum number of units that be involved in the program? What's the cooperation?
What's the maximum number that we would take inside the district? I'd love to have them all over every school. It's just hard to get them, but as we know, numbers of people applying to be teachers inside colleges and universities is going down every year, so that number is lower. We need to get every time I reach out and say, we have a candidate from this university that wants to come to the school, all of the principals are like, I'll take that person because they know it's a great recruitment opportunity for their school. And once you get them in, get them involved in your school, that's where they can come and work.
Right, I just knew that it requires a little walk in the future to my first question, how much capacity do you have for the here? There's a limited number.
Typically, when they come in, they'll do, like if I come to fall and do my student teaching and I'm an elementary school major, I might go to 2 different schools and I would go to one school and work for about a month and a half, and then I would go to another school and work for about a month and a half. And it's the same thing in high school. Typically, they'll divide them up, but not always. But they'll have one mentor at each school and then the principal will be involved.
Also typically in a student teaching cycle, not placing them going into it's a gradual thing that student teaching. They may start out with what they call teaching one class lesson for the entire day. Or they may just do it for one specific class or credits across the day. Over time, though, as student teachers graduate, take on more and more classes where after approximately 8 to 9 years, they are teaching every class all day long. And in fact, at the end of that time frame, there's something called solo teaching, where it's very defined supervising teacher. She says, I'll check in on you now and put you in charge. And so gradually grow some of those skills and also the confidence and the level of management of class. Middle school typically don't do 2 years of self-care and start over one class. And then next week you may have 2 classes. We'll graduate with power meeting.
So you mentioned that it's a great recruitment opportunity. Do you have any experience that how many students can come and teach with us?
Well, I'll be honest, we really started doing this program over the last couple of years, so we've not had a lot before I came here, or at least there weren't records of them before I came here. So I know we've had a couple that we hired over the last 2 years, but I don't have information on that.
One last thing, we are starting to bring back some of our own. I know there's about a few that just about 6, 7, 8 years ago graduated from our high schools that are now teaching in our school system. It's always nice to see them all come back and say this is wrong. So we will also need a motion to approve the Western Governors University student teaching MOA as presented. Motion by Ms. Hollingshead, second by Ms. Bowen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Item 6D is personnel notifications. There is no action required on this. It is just a monthly receipt of personnel notification from the superintendent. Item 6E, annual investment report. Ms. Rogers and Ms. Owens.
Hello. So the investment report is a requirement that we have to provide you every year. It is informational only. It is there for you. You can see on that the total funds we have invested as of July 1st, 2020, and that should actually be 2021, is $1,121,500.
and that's the same that we have at the end of the year. However, the market value has increased by quite a bit, and that's just the time that we are currently in. MBS has reached out to us repeatedly over the last several months to show us that the CD rates are starting to increase and encouraging us to invest more, but of course we're not going to be investing more at this time, but we do expect the market values to start increasing. On the second slide, you'll see that we have one CD added this year, we had one mature, and we currently have 6 active, and they're scheduled to mature approximately every year for the next several years, but they are very low interest rates. They were purchased during the pandemic time when the interest rates were very low. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it's an informational report.
Are these investments part of for the district, or are they separate?
They're part of our total fund balance. So if you want to look at it that way, they do go into the contingency fund. In addition to they're part of the budget revenue.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Roger and Ms. Owens. Moving on into item 6F, the unaudited annual financial report. Ms. Roger, Ms. Owens, and Superintendent Bradley.
So before we start talking about annual financial report, the audit, the working budget, we want to set a little bit of global context on one, how we've been spending our money, how we've been prioritizing any shifts of money, as well as long-term global realities of our financial work. As we talk about C, what are the trends in that over the past 2 years, what do we see happening in the future. I think even more importantly, the last few years in schools in particular. A year ago, we were sitting here and we were still in masks. 2 years ago, we weren't sitting here. We were on virtual. There was no one in school. The last 2 years have been a unique time. I bring that up only because this last 8 weeks in our schools has been really powerful. Teachers and students to get back to a sense of normalcy. It's been the first time in the last 3 years we've been able to really begin to generate a future-centered narrative because we weren't talking about quarantines and we weren't talking about masks. And I think the reality of some of that did wear on schools due to staffing and the issues of quarantine was the biggest challenge in schools. When you have people that are missing weeks upon weeks of school because of the nature of the quarantine, it made it very complex. Our reality is we can't talk about that as something that holds us back. We really are talking about the future of our schools, and this is our conversation tonight around our next generation guarantee. So our reality is we can't predict the future. We don't know exactly what school looks like in the next 10 to 20 years, but we know we have to continue to create the future as we think about what must exist as opportunities for our students. So these students here, this teacher here, they're next. One way or another, these are the next generation leaders of our communities and the next generation leaders of our schools. I'm bringing this pamphlet up here because this is really the conversation that I'll be having. Is on the back page. This young lady here is she's a 3rd grader, Cox's Creek. I was in STEM class with her a few weeks back.
That is Bailey, and she's in 5th grade, and she's excellent at basketball.
So I asked Bailey, I was like, did you know you were on this pamphlet? Because I had the pamphlet in class, leaving a conversation with the teacher. And she said, yeah, my coach showed me that a few weeks ago. She just brushed it off, not a big deal. So I do want to point you to the back of this conversation, because we've been having this conversation for a few months. Everyone should have access to this pamphlet. The inside is a very global view of some ways that we are funded, as well as some trends that we've experienced. So, it looks like this. So by the end of this conversation, I'm going to talk about how the SEEK formula, which many of the guest comments reference, if it continues the trend we're on right now, our Our schools received $0 for students in the state of Kentucky in 7.5 years. So if we grow in the next 7.5 years, and it's actually, after talking with consultants, knowing that much of this data is based on forecasts, it's actually worse, probably about the next 7 years. So let me repeat that. If we grow as a property value assessed in Nelson County the same rate we have for the last 4 years, we're probably wrong. But if we do, we would receive $0 from the state seed formula, because the formula is mathematically broken. So before we talk about how the seed formula doesn't work mathematically for places like Nelson County, I want to talk a little bit about how we prioritize growth. Because tonight we are talking about, while we're lowering the tax rate, slightly lowering the tax rate, it does generate additional local revenue. And it also generates, for one of the first times in the last 4 years, additional revenue that we can put into our schools for long-term growth. So what does it look like to prioritize that conversation? So firstly, we've been able to, over the last 4 years, continue to focus on the first part of NEXT, which is next generation professionals. Next generation professionals, not just our teachers, but all in this community and our school communities. And these are some of the raises we've been able to do over the last 4 years. And I want to make it clear, while we've been able to do these raises, our salary schedule is still, as a regional base, at best average compared to our regional education reality, education market. Our goal we set just over a year ago was a 10% increase in salary by 2024. That is a major component of our conversations. In addition to that, we'll be talking in the months ahead about teacher leadership pathway development. This summer we started some of that work. Last month we talked about CTE as a 14 extended days, beginning to increase their capacity to be a part of a bigger conversation. That leadership pathway work, along with this 2.5% increase in salary, is part of our goal to move towards 2023 and 2024, and really is the primary focus for any increase in funding. To do that work is going to take every bit of the revenue that we generate. But not just teachers. I think, what's something that I think we've not been, I would say, overly politicizing is any of this. Over the last 4 years, not only have we increased teacher pay by 12%, but we've also increased instructional, non-instructional leaders across the district at a remarkable rate. This Board of Education has prioritized people. On the left side, you have a cafeteria manager. The starting salary went from $10.71 to $17.61. Below that is a line code. The average salary went from $9.20 to $14.04. Not only did the salary increase at this level, remember we do pay 30% on top of that for benefits. In the middle we have bus drivers. I will say bus drivers were given a raise significantly in advance of 4 years ago. That's one reason they didn't get as much of a raise, but the bus driver paid from $14.36 to $17.61. That's starting pay. That's a 23% increase. Our facility leads, so our maintenance guys and our facility team here, the starting pay went from $9.20 to $16.27. That's a 77% increase in starting pay. And this, I would argue, was long overdue. But I want to be clear in saying that this narrative around teachers or administrators and all those things, we do want to continue to take care of those people, and we want to continue to think about how we're recruiting the best and brightest of our community. At the same time, we've also been heavily committed to making sure that every person in our ecosystem is compensated at a competitive wage. And we don't sit and talk about this, we don't sit and, put it out there to the community and tout it, but this is something that we continue to be committed to each year, and will continue to be committed to. Every person in our team, on our team, is really an important player. I also want to speak our bus team, our transportation team in particular. Huge growth over the past few years. We're one of the few districts in the state of Kentucky that didn't have to shut down routes, didn't have to cancel routes, that was able to continue to maintain. Now we have a stable force. The next part of next is really about every student. Our reality is right now, every student in our schools doesn't have the same opportunities to be successful in every school. That's our reality. We've been talking about that for a year and a half. We cannot offer the same opportunities and pathways to kids in our middle schools today that we would like. When you have cohorts of 125, when you have 125 kids in the middle school, you simply can't offer the pathway opportunities. That's a big part of this conversation, but it's even bigger than that. We're really looking at the benefits we get from that for elementary students. Part of next is every student in every school has those opportunities. And that's what we're working towards. That's the most important piece of this conversation. We're also committed to this conversation around the crossroads of learning. We're in this reality where the 20th century, the foundation is really important. The 21st century skills, we have to really embed into what we do in schools. We have a combination of grant money and general fund money that has continued to accelerate preschool funding and early literacy. We're spending $500,000 this year in early literacy leadership and programming. We're spending $1.75 million this year in early learning for preschool. We're one of the few schools in the districts in the state of Kentucky that has all-day 4-year-old preschool. We've seen massive growth in 3- and 4-year-old enrollment at Louisville, Boston, and New Haven. That is a 10 to 15-year commitment. We see and reap the benefits of that over the next 10 to 15 years. We've also had a major commitment, you're going to hear more about that, around the way we're bringing teachers together for additional time. And that's really where the leadership pathway conversations comes in. We want to be able to do more with teams during the summer. Lastly, and for those of you in the room that think, well, this is a lot of money, this money here is all byproduct of grant money. So this last piece here, almost $13 million is a byproduct of grants. And the grant funding has come from a variety of sources. But this is money that we had to pursue, we had to invest significant time in, but we'll be generating about $13 million back into the Nelson County schools that are really on behalf of a number of grants and team members that made that happen. So I share that to say that is part of our strategy around next. These are some of the commitments that we're making for the future of our community. That T is really about together with families, community, where we have 140 partners, 140 teachers, additional people in our ecosystem that are supporting our students. Over 1,000 students have been a part of professions-based learning over the past 3 years. At the end of the day, what we want is an opportunity for every kid that goes to school in Nelson County to have an opportunity to live, work, and grow in our community. Plain and simple. We want to make sure they have pathways to success to live, work, and grow here in Nelson County. So, this conversation really will drive much of the conversations over the next few months as we continue to think about how we're allowing these things to come to life and grow. Now I'm going to shift to the inside. School funding in Kentucky, combination of a number of things. This summarizes, in general, how school funding occurs. Here is a comparison. Per pupil funding in Kentucky, and if you go to KD's website, you can download the spreadsheet. In fact, I've sent the spreadsheet to some of you in this room. Many of you have looked at it. In the state of Kentucky, there are 173 school districts. I have 173 school districts. We're currently on, based on the most recent comparative report on the Kentucky Department of Education, we're 163rd in the state of Kentucky in state funded per student. We are 22nd locally. Notice those two things, they offset each other. 163rd in state, 22nd locally. From facility funding per pupil, we are 6th in the state out of 173 student districts. Our students receive more money per student. And there's a reason for that. We have 12 schools. And that's the only way that they can stay viable. It's the only way. Is the Nelson County School Board. Early 21st century made commitments to be part of that process of gain facility funding to keep schools open in New Haven, in Boston, and so on down the line in Bloomfield. That's why you'll see the facility funding that we have in Nelson County is higher. Here's the unfortunate part. Nelson County taxpayers are paying the it's the top about 12% of the state. Our total funding is 116. So out of 150 districts, we receive less money than 115 other districts, more money, and what would that be? 60 something, right? So that's where we are. By comparison, you can find this information, KDE, type in C, KDE, this is a spreadsheet, you can sort it. If you want me to send it to you, I can send you the spreadsheet. So let's talk about this guaranteed base. The guaranteed base works like this, and this is where I'm going to talk about how in 7.5 years we won't have any funding. So in the state of Kentucky this year, we received $4,100 a student. Those of you that are math people, this is going to be a joy. Those of you that aren't, this is going to be painful. So $4,100 times 4,123 students. That's how many students on an average day during that year attended our school. Equals $16.9 million. So we should receive $16.9 million. It's the guaranteed base. However, there's something that's really important in this guaranteed base. It's called the 30-cent local effort. So you take the assessed property value and times it by 0.003, and that's the amount of money you lose in the guaranteed base. So we'll lose money, this $16.9 million, we'll lose that based on the guaranteed base, which is, again, our property value times 0.003. So the top line was our forecasting. That was what we were forecasted to have as property assessment. Good news, or bad news, now you might see it. What actually ended up coming to light was about how much more than that? So about 130 million more was forecasted. I put this together as a part of a forecast. So we were supposed to go to $3.689 billion in property assessment. You times that at 0.003, we lose $11,069,000 from the guaranteed base. So it's not really a guaranteed base. Right? So if you take the forecasted reality, you take 16.9 million, you subtract 11 million, you get 5.8. We actually don't get 5.8. We're going to get less than 5.8. So let's talk about this local effort. If you take the amount of money we're getting, 5.8 million, take it up here, divide it by 423 students, it equals $1,415. Ms. Holland said recently published an article that said we were getting $27, and that's true. If you include the money we get for students that have exceptional needs and or homeless. Okay, so those are additional add-ons for students that have exceptional needs and or homeless and or ESL. So with those students, you receive different money. But let's say the traditional student in the school, we're receiving $1,415 per student from the state. Actually, it's less than that now. This is what was forecasted. Locally, this is how much we're paying per student. It goes directly into the general fund. And this is all really going into it. This can be used to pay for students. Teachers need to use this money to run the day-to-day operations. This is how that works out. Notice we can't spend any of this money. This is protected money. It's going up every year because that's the way the formula determines it. So you can see there's a real unevenness. So in your pamphlet, it shares that. That's the divide you see. This year, this number of 2023 is going up significantly. The Fund 1 means the general fund that we use to support operations of our district. This number has gone up even further. So let's talk about what's happened in the last 4 years, because the last 4 years is really the challenge we face. The last 4 years, our property values went from $2.6 billion, actually $3.8 billion, but it says 3.6. That's how much our property values are up. which leads to about $1 billion difference. Everybody's talking about, Mr. Phelps is talking about his property going up $75,000. All in all, the property has gone up over $1 billion in just 4 years. My percentage, that's a huge percentage. It's 40%. 40% decrease in property values. It's crazy. And the formula wasn't written to take these things into consideration. It has to change. So if you take $1 billion times about 0.003, which is now 1.2 billion, we lost $3 million of the guaranteed base in the last 4 years. We actually lost more than that. But I'm just explaining the math. This is the math of how the formula works. So how do we get to 7.5 years to 0? Well, if we grow, so just remember, we're supposed to receive $16.9 million. Currently, we lose $11 million. So at least this is $5.8 million, now it's $5.6. If you take $3.689 million, that's 0.03, again, we lose this number. Remember this number? Because the difference between this number and this number is only $5.8 million. So how do we lose $5.8 million? This is how we lose the rest of the money. So, if our property values at any time ever hit $5.6 billion, what do you think? Oh, it would take to $5.6 billion. Seems like it would take a long time. If we ever hit $5.6 billion with the same amount of students we have today in our schools, we'll lose $16.9 million, which means we receive $0 in funding. Because the guaranteed base, you lose it all in this model. So, to be clear, this is what we have to get to, $5.6 billion. This is what we have today, which is a little off. It's about 1.79. It says 1.9. This is the amount of money the property values have to go up. So property has to go up $1.9 billion. How long does that take? Well, if you divide that by what's happened in the last 4 years, if that continues, it's in 7.5 years, which isn't really right. If it continues at current rate, it's less than 7, based on what we just had. So in 7 years, Nelson County Schools will receive $0 for the traditional student out of $17 million. That's why the funding formula is broken. And yes, I've spoken to multiple people about the funding formula. I've spoken, there's a district in this region, one district that is actually getting worse than us about this, and it's Bullitt County. Bullitt County's situation is even worse than ours. No one else is impacted in the same way unless you go to Northern Kentucky. So, the chances this formula has changed in the next 2 years is really low. But I can tell you that when we show this number and we do the math and tell them if we grow at the same rate we've been growing, we will have $0 in 7.5 years. That is the narrative that needs to be public. And that's the mathematical, the slide's public. The numbers are wrong, it's actually worse than I've made it. Here's a little bit of a reality. We talk about Nelson County having things and us spending money. Here's our reality. We go across all of these counties: Greene County, Marion County, Hart County, Taylor County, Washington County, Spencer, Marion, Monroe, Danville, Hartstown, E-Town, Hart County, Jefferson, Nelson. Bullitt. There's only one district that gets less money than we do. This graph right here is really basically, if we receive the same amount of state and federal money as these districts, that's how much more money we would have based on 2021 fiscal year numbers of state and federal funding. So let's just use an easy one here. If we had the same amount of money per people, state and federal, as Hardin County, we would have approximately $4 million more today in our general fund we can use to support students. Now this is the crazy part. We go here to Greene County, Marion County, Hart County. I don't live there. I can't speak for all the reality in those communities, but I can say this. If we had Greene County's state and federal funding today, we would receive $19 million additional money from the state and federal government. Notice, we're not talking about state and federal, we're talking about local taxes. We are also competing with every single one of these districts in this region. This is total fund. Notice this includes all the on-behalf payments to the state, insurance for employees, all the work for transportation. This is a lot. of information in this one. This shows essentially how much total funding occurs in those districts. So while Jefferson County doesn't receive that much more in state and federal, locally they're receiving a lot more. In fact, if we receive Jefferson County's funding, we'd be receiving $3,500 more a year, which would be about $14 billion a year more. Does it take that much more money to educate children in these counties? I don't know. At the top is the same way. Let's look at Bardstown. So we have here in our community a very unique situation. We have an independent district, and that independent district is funded through the same formula we're funded through. Same exact formula. In the Nelson County schools, this $8,500 includes every single thing the state can possibly pay for. Insurance, transportation, all those pieces of the puzzle. Notice, we're getting very little of that that actually goes towards students in the classroom. Very, very little. That $8,533 in Nelson County schools is 19% less than they're going to receive for a student in Bardstown City Schools. It's a lot of money. In fact, it's about $6 million. On our, if you take 4,123 times about that, it's a little over $6 billion. That's not Bardstown's fault. It's just the way it works out. Same here in the state of Kentucky. This is even scary. You take an average student in the state of Kentucky, this is the state and federal funding they're receiving overall. $11,788 fiscal year 2021. That's our kid. That's 38% more money. And the reason is because there is a federal state equity formula that says we're going to move things around based on where you live, based on those property values. Obviously, that formula has outgrown itself. This shift has led to an $8 million shift over the past 15 years onto the local burden. That shift is a part of retirement costs that continue to grow. It's a shift that has continued to think about how the wealthier property values get less and less in Nelson County. So while we don't feel necessarily like we're the wealthiest community in the state, the formula does feel like we are. So what have we been doing? We've continued to repurpose and reallocate resources. We've continued to think about how we consolidate and unify resources. That's what we've been doing over the past 4 years. We are already top of the state for building efficiency, energy management. We've continued to leverage state and federal programs. We have more grants right now that are supporting our schools than ever in the history. It's not even close. We've continued to think about and reduce operational costs over the last 4 years, and we continue to build private-public partnerships, not only with community partners, like Guthrie Opportunity Center, but workplaces all across our ecosystem. Part of our unifying resources reality is, we want to lower taxes, but we also want 12 schools. If the Nelson County School Board did not choose to generate local revenue over the past 15 years, we would be down to 4 or 5 schools because the rest of them would have been closed. We could not afford to keep them open. This is just a very basic graph that shows the relationship between school size and per pupil expenses. Our smallest school is 50% more than our largest schools. So Bluefield Elementary School is the smallest school in the district. A student there costs 50% more than students in our largest school. Just is the way it is. It's always been like that. We've continued to reallocate. We've continued over the last 4 years to commit to counselors and nurses in every building. And we have more school counselors today supporting students than we've ever had before. We've continued to increase student leadership opportunities. We've continued to think about how student leadership can occur in our buildings through athletic leadership. We've added assistant principals in those small schools that we knew needed to have stability and viability over the long haul. We've added teachers to increase electives. We've increased teacher pay. We've added workforce leaders in each school. We've had continued ownership of our local technology center that's continued to do more and more. We've committed to K-2 literacy specialists, classroom libraries, full-day preschool. That's all really come through reallocating here and there to make those things work. Repurposing. So we've been doing a lot. The narrative that we're taking money and misusing it, I would argue, based on our work here, is simply not a true narrative. Our reality is these students, these teachers are growing. They're having amazing opportunities, and we want to continue to do that work. We've been able to do that also while losing significant funding from the state. And that has put a burden on local taxpayers. There's no question that has added to that. Our rate has gone down over the last 4 years. Revenue has increased. The recommendation we have for you tonight that you're hearing about was not 4%, it's not a 4% revenue increase. We're one of the few counties and entities that won't be making a 4% revenue increase recommendation. And we're doing that because we know we did receive some additional funding that we didn't expect, some CTE funding, and some other layers that allow us insulation further. At the end of the day, our biggest challenge we have to continue to navigate is this challenge right here. I don't want to fearmonger, not into it, but this reality is not going away as long as property values increase. Maybe they don't increase. Maybe we stabilize. I don't know. So this is just really a very lengthy introduction to this whole conversation. It sets a precedent for Amy and Jessica as they talk through by the numbers of different variables at play in our budgeting process.
All right, in just a moment we're going to start with our unaudited AFR discussion. So every year we have to present an unaudited AFR to the state of Kentucky by July 25th. By that time, you have a lot of information. There are still some other things happening during that time. What you're getting tonight is a summary, knowing that we are still finalizing details through the annual audit. Jessica is working with the auditors. I'm not. So I just wanted to show you our working budget suggested we would have about $11,500,000 in seed funding. We ended up getting just under that. The taxes, we estimated $20,850,000 and we got almost 22. A large amount of that was distilled spirits. Distilled spirits had gone crazy over the last couple of years. So other income was right on track by about $40,000 differences, and then we ended up transferring less than we originally anticipated in order to cover those. So I wanted to kind of show you on the general fund, your beginning balance was about $5.5 million, and then towards the end of the year, you uncommitted some funds that had been sitting aside for old projects for us to be able to utilize for some of the building projects that were coming up, and that was almost $1 million, giving us a total revenue with the beginning balance of $47 million. Our total expenses were about $39.5, and that was because of the transfers that we made according to the approved EG1s into the construction. So the money's not gone, it's just been moved to another fund, leaving our ending balance at $4.2 million. Salary expenses were just under $27 million, and then our non-salary expenses were $11.2, largely because of the $3 million that we transferred to Fund 360. So the unaudited financial report and the balance sheet are there for your review. There's no approval required. This is informational, but I would be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Can you explain the difference? Because I know you're going to do this, because I just said maybe 5.6 million to see, and that is an guaranteed base. It only includes the traditional student.
That is correct. We received approximately $2.8 million for our exceptional needs students, and we received approximately $1.7 million for transportation funding, and then there's smaller portions for home, hospital, homeless, and at-risk students that we receive in addition to that base funding.
Are there any questions? So one question I'll ask, so this is pre-audit AFR. So the next steps would be?
So they're in the middle of the audit right now. Of course, that has to be finalized by November, at which point we will submit an audited annual financial report to the state of Kentucky. I don't anticipate your ending balance to change in Fund 2. At this point, we're just finalizing details. We had a couple of accounts receivables came in late. Those are already added to this number. I don't really see any differences at this point. I don't expect any drastic differences.
This is 99.9% what we will see in that final.
Yes, they also provide entries for us for the pension liability and the OPEB liability, which doesn't affect Fund 1, but it does affect your Fund 51 and your Fund 52. You'll see notes on that. Those are the liabilities that we have in the retirement system. Those are the type of entries that we typically have in this.
Okay, so no action required on this. This is just a unaudited pre-AFRs.
But we'll go ahead and move on.
So, ready to move on into item 6G, the general fund tax levy discussion.
So I always like to take a few minutes to talk through the process of the general fund tax levy. I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand, or at least know the process that we go through, that the state goes through, and what control different entities have. So as you all know, seed funding is based on the property assessments, and a lot of people think that school districts get to control those things, and we unfortunately do not. That's all handled by the PDA or county. So each district PDA submits their assessment data to the state, and this year we actually had an issue where it was had to be returned, and then we had to wait for a new PDA assessment. We didn't actually get the new PDA assessment certified by the state until the middle of August. And, you know, the state of Kentucky, there has certain laws from the Sheriff's Department that says that they have to get tax bills out by a certain date, but then the Kentucky Board of Education doesn't actually approve tax rates until October. So it's unfortunate that the two laws don't work together for school districts and the Sheriff's Department.
I've always been confounded by the fact that the actual working budget is never passed for any school district prior to the start of the fiscal year.
And oftentimes we don't have the information we need even at the time that we pass some of the budgets. So that's kind of the situation we're in. So the PDA sends this assessment data to the state certifies those rates and sends them back to the district. With that information is the calculation for the tax rate. So what they do is they take your old assessments, multiply it by your prior year rate, and then they divide it by your new assessments, not including new property. And they get this rate based on that, and they say, okay, this is your compensated rate. When they divide that out, they multiply it by 1.04 to find the rate that would be considered a 4% increase. So they provide all the numbers, and they say, if you want to take the compensated rate, it's this. If you want to take a 4% increase, it's this. And they give it to you and say, okay, go to your board. So the board has to use that data and what's going on in their county to make the best decision for their students. The seed funding formula happens and is finalized before you make your decision, because it has nothing to do with the rate that's decided. The seed funding formula has already showed us what we're losing. No matter what we do tonight, we've lost that funding. It doesn't come back regardless of the decision you make tonight. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. So we will be recommending a reduction in rate from 73.7 to 73.2 for both real estate and personal property. But I do want to go through some of the details of what that looks like for us. So local tax revenue is anticipated to increase from about $25 million to about $27,600,000. And that will be an increase in tax revenue of $2.6 million. That includes distilled spirits. It includes motor vehicles. It includes new property. It includes all of those things, not just what goes in the general fund. It includes all of it. Our state seat-based revenue, this is the amount per student, for just the district's general education student, will increase from $6 million to $5.4 million. And that's referencing what Mr. Brown has said about the 5.8 for actually be 5.4. There's another important piece to this, though, that you can't see. As you know, the state has reiterated that they've increased transportation funding. That increase for us was about $400,000. They also talked about the increase for kindergarten students. That increase was about $350,000. But we're still losing $600,000. So we're actually losing the value of about $4 million this year, not just the $600,000. Because we also didn't get the increased amount for the transportation, and we didn't get the increased amount for the kindergarten students, or at least we're collecting. We don't get to realize those additional funds. The state seat add-ons will increase slightly. Those again are for transportation and our exceptional needs students and at-risk students. Our FSPK, the property tax disbursement, will go from 5.1 to 5.7. And our tax collection fees will, of course, go up because we don't get to control those fees. Whereas an independent school district can choose to collect their own taxes, we cannot. We have to have the sheriff's department do that, and therefore we have to pay a percentage on that. So the actual difference for our general fund is about $1.7 million. And that's great because that will cover the cost of the raises that we just provided last year. I'd also like to reiterate that from 2017 to 2020, although we increased the 4% revenue increase per year, we didn't see an increase in revenue overall as a district. In those 4 years, we had a $1 million increase to the general fund. This past year was the first year we saw any significant increase, and this will be the second year. So even though we've been increasing, we've only been increasing enough to offset the loss in state funding.
Amy, can you explain why FSBK actually works against our general fund?
So the first 15 cents, it's actually an equivalent, it's like 16.8, has to go to our facilities. We have no choice in this matter, and it can only be used for facilities. So while we are decreasing our tax rate, that percentage that goes to facilities has not decreased. It increases every time the assessment increases, regardless of what our tax rate is, and regardless of what our total revenue is. So every year, that number is going to increase as long as your assessment is increasing. It's increasing at more than 4%.
That's right.
Even though we are maxed out at 4% revenue increase, there's no max on the FSBK increase. If your assessment increases by 10%, the amount you contribute to FSBK increases by 10%.
So whenever you said 16.8, is that what I heard?
That's the equivalent.
Which that is, sometimes it can also be referred to in this case as the triple nickel.
That's correct.
So the 3 nickels that in the late 90s, just after 2000, were passed by previous boards, that were all dedicated towards facilities. How many other districts around us have, I mean, I know everybody's got at least one nickel.
Yes.
That was the requirement. How many others? I know Marion County, I think, has the triple.
I think about 10% of districts have the triple. 10% of the districts, maybe 17.
Statewide.
Statewide.
But what about around us? I mean, just off the top of your head, do you know if Washington County have the triple nickel?
I don't.
No,
I'm not aware.
Bardstown does, and Bowling County does.
Bardstown does, and Bowling County does, okay.
Yeah.
But other than those two and us, everybody else is probably sitting at whatever the base rate is, plus a 1 nickel, maybe 2 nickels.
This is also why you see districts attempting to increase and collect an additional nickel, and that one's recallable, and most districts are not succeeding in that. We are lucky enough that we already have the 3 nickels, and we have not had to do that.
So then at 73.2, if you take out the 16.8, puts it at 56.4. Really, we need to add a nickel back in because that's required by everybody. So that really sets, the comparison tax rate at about a 61, 62 cents, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Something along that line.
Just to remind, the board made those commitments 20 years ago because they knew in order to they maintain the viability of 12 buildings, that was,
Right.
that's how they do it.
Well, I remember whenever I came on board in 2008 that Dr. Lance, superintendent at that time, and I can remember Frank Hall and Ray and that whole group of board members. I mean, one of the things that I heard quite often was commitment to schools in the outreach, outside, outer areas of Nelson County. And that's what funded that, was that triple nickel at that time.
So this is just a review that we've provided each year to show our historical tax rates. I mean, we're very similar right now to where we were in 2016. Our tax rates have not increased drastically in those last 10 years. I wanted to show you this, and this goes back to that base student, per student funding that we were talking about. If you look at 2013 in the pink, that would have been our local effort per student. The blue at the bottom would have been our seat-based guarantee. Those colors in between would be the add-ons that the state has provided. Compare that to 2023, and you can see the base guarantee amount that we're receiving is quite a bit less, and the local funding has increased, although the add-ons have also increased slightly. You can see how drastically different that is, and it's just a representation of what we're seeing as far as our local funding versus the state.
Is the orange transportation adjustment, is that what?
That is.
Okay.
That's
so
what
the
we're
transportation adjustment has been reduced somewhat, and then it came back up just a little.
I think in 2013 it was almost 100%, and then prior to this year we were at 60% or 59%, and it's back up at 70% right now.
What's the exceptional child adjustment?
It's the special education students.
Okay. So, I mean, was it not provided in 2013?
Not through this formula. So this, again, this is the range that has happened for us over the past 10 years. As Mr. Bradley said, this grew even more when we got the final details. The final SEEK data, the forecast, of course, is based on trend data. The tentative that comes out, and just came out a few days ago, is based on your actual assessments and your actual year data from 2022. And so local funding will account for quite a bit more. The percentages look to be a little bit off, but you can still see the differences right there. So as discussed previously, we are recommending a rate of 73.2 on both real estate and personal property. That will also include the 54.8 on motor vehicle, which we can't change, but we do need to vote on each year, and then the utility tax, which will stay at 3%.
So now would be time for any board members that have questions or need clarification on anything.
Just really clear that whether we take a percentage, a 3%, whatever our percentage is, facility funds come out of that no matter what.
Yes. Nothing on this page will change if you choose not to take this rate, other than your top line, which will reduce your bottom line. Everything else stays the same.
And you said that bottom number, 1.3, 1.4.
1.7.
1.7, I'm sorry, that covers the staff raises that this board committed to do.
Not just the 5% from last year that we did in the middle of the year, but also the 2.5% for this year.
Do we know what section of the county will be reassessed?
I don't have that information off the top. I do know they've already been assessed for this year. What these numbers are going to apply to are the numbers that have already been assessed and have already been submitted to the state.
Okay, because, you normally reassess on many years, like 1 out of 3 or something. You don't reassess them.
They've been catching up from prior years.
Actually, the state law requires every PBA at least once every 4 years to reassess all property, which I was saying to Mr. Phelps' point earlier. I think you had roughly estimated 70% of the property value had gone up and was reassessed. I think mine was 42 or 45, I forget the number. But I'm going to guess that And which is, and it's not to say that that's right or wrong, or you know, it makes an answer right or wrong, but I think what it does do is it shows us as a community that not until the last 4 or 5 years, and I think you just made the comment, Ms. Owens, that reassessments had not been done for many years. And I'm not sure what prompted all of a sudden that to happen. I mean, I'm not the PDA, so I can't.
I will say, from my understanding, because the PDA is required to submit assessments that reach 90% of the actual value of homes being sold. So for a lot of years, they were submitting that data, and there was no question, and the state said, hold on a second. The numbers you're submitting are not 90%. So for, say that a home was assessed at $105,000, if they listed that home and sold it for $175,000, that $105,000 assessment isn't 90% of the value of that home. And so the state turned the information a couple years ago and made them reassess and said, these numbers are not accurate, these homes are selling for a lot more.
Yeah, and that's something that I noticed from several different communities. I think whenever we first started seeing it here in Nelson County, I happened to be in the city of Paris around that same time, and Paris Independent, being independent, do their own tax collection like Bardstown Independent School do. And while I was standing there talking with front office staff, we were probably having phone calls from people in the community asking for previous year's tax bills. They were trying to figure out what had happened. And the same thing was happening within Bourbon County, which is where Paris is what you were just describing, is that reassessment evidently had not been happening for quite some time. You know, this is dirty, what I'm getting ready to say is dirty math, because it doesn't take into account compounding of percentages. But, you know, over that 20-year period from whenever we bought our home until it was reassessed, or until now, I should say, you know, if it was 40, just rounded off 40%, you would think that each year that home value should have on average gone up about 2%, which means once every 4 years about 8%. To me, 8% would have been much more palatable. I mean, I had shocked too that whenever I opened up my property tax bill a couple of years ago, and as I started looking at that, it started hitting me. Oh, so it's catch-up time on assessment of value. I'm sorry, were you going to say something else, Ms. Mayor?
I'm just saying, where I live, it's been going on for some time, it's every 4 years. So I haven't been shocked when I open up my open house. I know they've been doing it.
Yeah.
I've been seeing it.
I don't think that's been the way it is. For it to jump,
No, it's not in every.
yeah, for it to jump from 2-point-some billion to 3-point-some billion, I forget the exact numbers. I mean, that's essentially a 40% or 50% jump, and some of that has to do with increase in home value. Some of that has to do with additional properties being built. So it's not all just reassessment of existing property.
Yes. So part of this, I will say that our new value for new property is generating more revenue this year than normal, about twice as much more than it would normally. So out of that 750,000 is actually new property.
Well, and that's why whenever, no offense to the Brown, but 7.5 years, it might be overly aggressive or overly thinking that. I think it will still continue to grow, especially as more economic development happens within the community, whether it's the Kentucky Owl that's going to be happening, or the new milk distillery that's being built just around the corner from us here.
I hope you're right, but we did say that 3 years ago.
I do want to say too, I mean, Sheriff made a good point. I mean, if we can, we always like either the very end of August or the very first meeting of September to do that tax rate setting, because it does allow you to do everything in a little bit more timely manner. This year, and it's happened a couple of times, to nobody's necessary fault, but just someone saying, oh, wait a minute, time out. The numbers were not right. We have to re-certify those numbers again.
We actually intended to do this at the September 6th board meeting, and then when they that we could not come within 2 weeks, or just a couple weeks, and be able to present that appropriately.
I just want to be able to work with everybody, so it benefits everybody.
No, it's a great point, and I also will say that I do not envy your staff's job. So I am one of those that waits until the last week of December to pay mine. I always make sure that the office is open and I don't miss the day. I can only imagine at the very first week of tax bill going out. So in that late September, early October time frame, by then that first week you're probably already worn out. From people going in there and even just small comments being made. Somehow we've not, society has turned into an unsociety almost. And I do appreciate how they're always so very nice. Even whenever the holidays are around there, and I'm the one there at 3:30 on December 30th. So
I have a good question. You brought up two things. That we get a 2.2% on our fees. Can you tell me when the last time that was even evaluated for the sheriff's office?
As far as
Yeah, you're responsible for doing that evaluation and showing us that it costs that much money to do this.
It's my job to do it.
So,
That's probably why you had to
so just to be clear,
So I'll be happy to see the lower rate once you realize it doesn't cost that much to do it.
Careful there, Ms. Sullivan. No, it's a good point, so, because I know you're also faced with some challenges that you're trying to help with your staff as well.
Correct. And two, you touched up, and I'll call the superintendent about this, the distilled spirit tax. I don't know if you guys are aware, they're talking about
It's interesting that you bring that one up, because I had a conversation with another board member who was from Eastern Kentucky. So last time I checked, there are only distilleries in Eastern Kentucky. However, they have these little black laws. And there was an unmined minerals tax for years. And that changed. And I think in Kentucky, out of 120 counties, I believe there's maybe about 40, give or take, 45 that have coal that could be mined in. So in those communities, they were getting a large amount of tax revenue based upon unmined minerals. The rock is still in the ground, the coal is still there, it's just not been taken out. It's taxes sort of like on what's in these big warehouses around the community. And that unmined minerals tax was changed. You stop and think, and so it was reduced. So a lot of those local communities lost huge dollar amounts in revenue from that unmined minerals tax being reduced. So here's the connection to what you just brought up, Sheriff. 45 out of 120 counties. That's only about a third of the counties in the Commonwealth really understood the impact that would have. So whenever there is a legislative session, it's always much more favorable whenever a politician can say, look what I've done. I've ended up saving you in your economy money. I've taken tax burden off of businesses in the community. It's a whole lot easier to say that. Well, the 45 out of 120, though, that could have put a stop to that. Now let's equate that, though, to the spirits tax that you were just referring to. Across the Commonwealth, 120 counties. I don't think that there are 45 counties that have distilleries and warehouses. 26, there we go. The man knows. So that means 26 out of 120 counties would look at any reduction in that distilled spirits tax as being a negative impact. 120 counties, though. The legislature and 26 communities at times overpower the other 94 representatives and senators to say, wait a minute, that's going to hurt us, because the other 94 will look at that and go, well, it looks good on us, so that we voted to lower something. And so I think that's something we also have to be very, very cautious about, is that quick gratification of saying, look what I did, I reduced a tax burden. Oh, it affects someone else, it doesn't affect me. And I do want to say, I believe, Superintendent Bradley, you had several conversations with Senator Higdon and to help them understand the negative impact that would have on our community.
It's pretty simple. Mr. Phelps was talking about his property. If the distilled spirits were removed, the board doesn't have a choice on setting a rate. There's a minimum required compensating rate. This number would go from about 73 cents to 83 cents. It would cost the average property owner about $200 on average. So that's a significant increase. Right? So the average property owner would pay $200 to offset the distilled spirits. That's what would happen without any determination by the local board.
And I'm glad that we do bring up that particular proposal so that we can all be aware of it. Because again, that can be something very easily that we go, oh, that will be good. It will encourage the businesses. Last time I checked, the warehouse construction companies that build those, Music Construction, they're probably about 3 to 4 years out without taking any more warehouse orders. As in, they've already got that many warehouses lined up to be built. I really don't think Evan Hill or Barton, I could be wrong, Barton or any of the others are going to go, well, if we don't pass that, get rid of that distilled spirit tax, we're going to empty warehouses and move them somewhere else.
It cost them $4 million to build one warehouse.
Yes, and I think they're talking about the last meeting I went to in Frankfurt, they were talking about that's going to be on the list of things to talk about is reduction or elimination of the spirit.
It's elimination.
Yeah.
You know reduction, it's elimination.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is I don't mean to sound like in opposition or in some sort of tug of war with, our signature industry here. It's just, I think we have to recognize that sometimes it is very easy for anybody to say, let me lower something, let me do something that helps one group, but I'm not going to be concerned about this other group over here.
Well, I think that's what you objected of.
So
we are paying attention to this stuff, and we are watching it, and we pay attention to all that. Tonight, I'm asking for a vote of 73.2 on property for real estate and personal property.
I'm sorry, Mr. Thrasher, you don't have to do that. I asked the sheriff a question. Mr. Thrasher, you don't have to do that. Mr. Thrasher, you don't have to do that.
Can we ask you to step out, sir? Excuse me. Mr. Thrasher.
Mr. Thrasher, you don't have the floor. You don't have the floor, Mr. Thrasher.
You know what? You can't make the choose, David.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we talk about the seed formula, and one of our guest speakers brought up, KSBA, which is Kentucky School Board Associations, they're a huge advocate to overturning a lot of this legislation or lobbying to overturn some of this legislation in how schools are funded. We are all members of that. We all attend those meetings, and we do that on a regular basis because we are fighting to change how this formula works. We know it's not good for our students, nor is it good for our property owners. This is not an easy decision for anybody sitting on this board at all. We all pay taxes just like the rest of the people that have gotten up and spoken tonight.
Yes.
We've all seen the destruction that it causes our families. I have senior parents that are also on fixed income. This is not easy for anyone.
Yes.
As we look at those seed formulas, do we see a change coming at all?
There was a committee that met last year before the legislative session that were investigating and looking at different possibilities. They did not reach a conclusion or decision. I know that it continues to be on a priority basis for the legislature, though, so I'm hopeful that they will begin meeting again before the next legislative session.
The seed formula is another one of those that, extremely complicated. You and Ms. Rogers, Superintendent Riley, you break it down into some smaller, much more manageable chunks. Excuse me, but the fact again that it is a 30-vote formula. Original intent was for those communities that had very, very low property values. They would receive much more state assistance. You know, it dates back to the late 80s in the lawsuit that was at Rose versus, and I forget the other half of that. It hasn't been revisited. One reason, it was doing its job in the first 10, 15 years. But then after a while, it becomes very easy to not change it. It's kind of working, let's just don't touch it. And then after a while, as people change in the legislative body, people forget what the original intent of it was and how that works. And it becomes even more complicated, which then means everybody goes, nah, let's just not do anything with it right now. Hopefully, though, something will happen. I mean, it's been 30 years, it's probably time for it to be looked at. But until the legislature actually will change the way the seat funding formula works, not just Nelson County, but we've got other districts across the Commonwealth that have this exact same problem, some of them worse than others. Do we have any questions for Ms. Owens or Ms. Rogers or other comments? So, then is there a motion on the tax rate to be set?
I'll make a motion.
And your motion is?
To pass.
To approve the recommended tax rate of 73.2 cents on real property and 73.2 cents on tangible property. So a motion by Ms. Bowling. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dickerson. All in favor? Oh, yes?
I want to know what percentage that is.
It's 3%.
What?
It's 3%.
So it will increase the amount of revenue coming in by 3%.
That's correct.
Why is that not up?
Because you're actually voting on the rate, you're not voting on a 3% increase.
I'm sorry.
The vote is actually to approve the rate. That was the only reason that it's not up there. But it is a 3% increase.
I think it's been on there the last several years, which is probably not.
No, we always say, right? We always say.
Revenue increase 3%.
In the actual motion, it just says the rate. It might be on the slides, but the actual motion always just includes the rate. And I apologize for not including it on the slides.
Yeah, and that is also because if the motion were to say 3%, then we don't really know exactly what that rate is.
Yes.
But Amy's always been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is 3% plus exonerations. It would have been, I believe, 73.9 if I remember correctly, if it was 4%.
So then the motion on the floor by Ms. Bowen is to set the tax rate of 73.2 cents on real and 73.2 cents on tangible property. I think Mr. Dickerson had seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So motion passes 4-1. The one dissenting, Ms. Perry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Thank you, Ms. Roberts. So moving on again to item 6H, the working budget.
So the municipal report is there available for your review if you would like to review it. I am going to go over a summary of it for you. Keep going. Keep going. I can go from there. Good. All right, so this is just going to be a summary for you. In May, you passed a tentative budget of approximately 37. I can yell if I need to. Just turn on the light. So, in May, we did a tentative budget expecting expenses of approximately $37 million. That was prior to knowing what our general fund tax levy assessment was going to be. It was also prior to knowing what the city funding was going to be because some decisions had not been made. You will see now that we are asking for a working budget where we anticipate the expenses will be about $38.5 million instead. What has happened there is our revenue has increased a little bit. As you see, it was going to increase by about $1.7 million. We already did have expenses. We anticipated having to cut back on some things that we didn't really want to, but we were able to include all of those in the budget. You can see that the biggest increase is in our school funding on that top section. The other school allocations in the section 7 allocations is where the majority of those funds went to, which is in salaries and staffing. Everything else will be spent basically the same as it was last year. There's very little increases as far as the spending for all the other categories. We will be at about 76% for salaries and benefits, and just under 10 for services, and just over 10 for supplies. And so the working budget, we expect either balance or to dip into our carry forward by about $500,000.
So, one question, this is something that, as I've talked with other districts too, that I always pose to them as a concern. So you said, what was it, 76% roughly salary?
That's correct.
Okay. So, I know, and it was mentioned earlier on tonight, that there have been massive dollar amounts coming into the Commonwealth of Kentucky as part of the CARES Act and ESSER fund.
Not the Nelson County, though.
But just in general, I'll say for the Commonwealth.
Yes.
Now, of course, all of those funds were based typically upon, I think we're going to do it again here, were based typically upon free and reduced lunch numbers, free and reduced lunch numbers, urban, rural, Title 1. And one of the things that always concerns me whenever I hear about things like ESSER or CARES is those are typically soft money. They're grants of some sort, which means if you start spending those funds on things that are recurring expenses, operational expenses, whether it's salaries or insurance premiums, anything that you have to pay every month or every year, eventually those soft funds run out. When it comes to salaries and the way that we are funding that within this budget, are we using some, any, none of those soft funds for positions?
We are paying some positions using ESSER. Currently, we are supporting K-2 literacy. We are also doing programs that are additional for our current staff. So the summer energy program is being funded through ESSER.
But something like that was a one-time expense, though. The summer energy.
Every summer, and these are things that we are working on, and as we see the value, we are working to incorporate them into this budget. All of our regular staffing, our teacher classrooms per student is not yet as much.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, is we've got to be very cautious whenever we use or earmark any of those soft kinds of dollars. Yes, there was over $1 billion, that's with a B as in boy, dollars that came into the Commonwealth of Kentucky through those two recovery bills. However, as you said, a very, very small amount of that came into Nelson County compared to some other counties of similar size, both of all based upon Title I and some other criteria. So ensuring that whatever our working budget is this year, as well as future working budgets, especially as those funds expire September 23 and September 24, depending upon which cycle of funds they are, that we're being cautious and careful that we don't use those to fund large volumes of recurring expenses. I've seen some districts that have hired several staff, and I emphasize several, meaning that it's not just one or two here or there, not just one in each school building. They've increased staff size considerably, and the question is, what will they do in September 23 and September 24?
We did not increase our staff. We did expand some of the programs that we were offering. We were very careful hire temporary staff that we expected that we would then have to terminate at the end of the grant.
So are we focused more on supplementing existing programs to either enhance them, expand them a little bit, provide more support for those programs, versus here's a bunch of new programs that are being created, or let's remove all the funding for something we want to keep and replace that solid funding with something that is much softer, something that will eventually expire and then we're left without any money.
And of course, needs that presented themselves because of the pandemic. The virtual programming was initiated through ESSER funding, but we know that we will end up having to incorporate that into the budget. The summer energy, as well as the teacher expanded learning, was generated because of the pandemic and being funded through ESSER, but we know that we will have to incorporate because we've seen the value of those things. But we are very careful not to just hire a bunch more teachers or create positions.
Yeah, which to me, that's the next question, and maybe going through your mind as well, Ms. Berry. Starting at some point over the next 24-month cycle, the next 2-year cycle, starting to identify the things that we are seeing positive results from, that are supporting staff, are supporting students, and ensuring that those are ones that we continue to find more concrete funding for versus the soft that we've had through the CARES program.
Didn't we hire someone, there was one hire made for something, summer or some kind, wasn't there a hire made though for summer, something last year, with that money?
I may have taken us down too much of a rabbit hole here on that.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure, I mean,
we have a couple positions that we're funding, but they aren't new positions. It wasn't
okay, that might be it.
Well, and I think you and I both are kind of talking the same language here, and that we want to make sure that not only this working budget, yes, not only this working budget and a future working.
But it doesn't need to be with that kind of funding, it needs to be with the permanent.
Understood.
That's the gist.
And you and I will both the same thing on that. So, are there other questions or comments about the proposed working budget for the FY23? Okay, so then I would need a motion to approve the FY23 working budget as presented. Motion by Ms. Berry. Second by Mr. Dickerson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Again, Ms. Sullivan, Mr. Rogers, thank you for all the hard work on that. Budgeting, tax rates, all of that. It's a messy subject, and each year I think we learn a little bit more about the process. So thank you both.
I just want to say thank you for working with me over the past several years. This will be my last official board meeting. As I've been at the Cedar Lake for a couple months now. I'm looking forward to being able to expand on the projects I'm doing there. I'll be able to support Jessica. But I truly enjoyed working with each and every one of you. And as you stated, the decisions you make, they're not easy. And I know that sometimes you receive comments and things, and they can be hurtful. But I know that you guys have the best interest of every student in this district at your heart. I know that the work that you do, that's your focus. And unfortunately, we have to make hard decisions sometimes, but our students are benefiting from those hard decisions. So thank you.
And thank you for your work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I appreciate it. Because we understand some things that when we go to CASBA, they don't do very well. Because it's a difficult subject, the budget's hard to read, the report is ridiculous, so thank you very much.
Ms. Owens will be teaching classes.
Yes. I wish you were teaching some of those classes because I enjoy this and I learn from you. And these are hard things to follow, and I'm still trying to figure them out. So I appreciate all the work that you've invested in us as board members and getting us caught up to speed. And vice versa, you are definitely an advocate for the students in Nelson County and have been ever since you've been here, at least since I've known you here. So, and I'm grateful for that.
And you're going to be a tremendous asset to the nonprofit group that you're going forward. I know that a lot of folks I call it pandemic effect. A lot of folks
Does it work? I'm glad you can hear me, Barry. So on a lighter note, the school calendar creation seems like we start the school year, but this is the process where we start thinking about how do we allocate time for the 23-24 school year. And really, I'm coming to you to ask for approval of our calendar committee. Our goal here is to create diversity and representation across our district of different personnel and perspectives. And these people are the recommended members to join the calendar committee. And upon approval today of that makeup, we would start meeting as early as next Tuesday to begin those conversations. And then hope that sometime in the November board meeting, we would potentially adopt the calendar upon your all's approval. So really, I'm just asking for approval of the makeup of the calendar committee members.
So I see as far as board member, we have Ms. Hollingshead, so not only is it board member, but parent. So we cover a couple perspectives.
Yes. You can see, I'm trying to list in parentheses, not only are many of these people different representatives across our community, but they're also parents in many of our schools, and I'm trying to list that here to show just how vast our representation of the committee would be.
Well, and you've got Ms. Gagne again from West Banco, who is a tremendous asset out of the years that I've just made in the calendar committee. She brings great insight into the business. The only thing I'll say, Ms. Hollingshead, is we have to report to your kids now. So whatever recommendations come out of that, they will look to you and say, Mom, it's your fault, or I like it. Does anybody have any questions about the recommendation of the calendar committee for the 23-24 school year? Okay, so then I would need a motion to accept the calendar committee as presented. Motion by Ms. Berry, second by Ms. Bowen. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Moving into 7A, next gen student success, Ms. Henderson and Ms. Newton.
Hello. So the last time that we were together at Foster Heights, we showed how our design strategies were uniting our district, our educators across the district, during the summertime for the Go Read and our Next Gen Institutes. And from then, we had a showcase where 330 teachers were listening and hearing and presenting their vision for the upcoming school year. So fast forward now, and for the last 4 to 5 weeks, we have been seeing our teachers dive deeper into the work for our students in their learning design labs.
So our design labs are the professional learning communities that you all have heard of if you're used to the education world. And so the past couple of weeks we've been engaging in these professional learning communities with design labs and really focusing on assessment. So we know through educational researchers like Marzano that assessment is crucial to the learning process and thinking about assessing for learning, assessment of learning. And so this has been a main topic of conversation amongst teachers. And our team at OKH here is going to be sharing a little bit about their process of looking at assessment and what questions teachers are bringing up as we think about the purpose of design labs, which is this right here, is coming together to create a shared vision for student success. So I'm going to have Ms. Priya over here, which is the principal of OKH, and Ms. Jury, who's the backpack leader of OKH, to share a little bit with you about what you see on this board here, which is evidence and artifacts of assessments and student work from teachers in these design labs.
Good evening, guys. So really, we met it started this summer. So we met one-on-one with teachers, and we started thinking about what are our values and beliefs in learning from one another. So we did this individually and in small groups. And some things that really were brought up were whole child growth, data that drives instruction, student achievement, learning from one another in these experiences. So this is the feedback that our teachers gave. And then we started thinking about, hey, these are really important things, but absent of a culture that supports this, we won't accomplish these really important things. So no one provides culture and experiences and vulnerability better than Brene Brown. So I spoke, we did a deep dive into some readings and learned about a culture that really is foundational to making it better, to being open to growth and building trust and flexibility and support from one another. So we created our values, and we created our culture, and then we started thinking about how do we bring these things to life. So we connected together and we think about what are our values in the PLC process and our design connects, and then we built a framework here aligned to our lead values, that's why we were there. We were there to think about literacy. We were there to engage our community, to affirm ourselves and others, to dare to go the distance. And our teachers created this protocol with thinking about what do we want from our time together? How do we learn and grow from each other? What do we value? Kind of bringing all this back to fruition. And they brought some student work, ideas for student work, ideas for some student assessment, and we were looking for these things that we said were valuable to us. So that's been our process. And our next generation design labs is Ms. Drew really going to speak through the implications of what that has been on her in co-teaching with some teachers in the learning process.
Good evening. So leaving off where maybe you just left off. So basically we brought something to the table as a teacher and we did a gallery walk of what we noticed and questions and implications on the work. So really what the teachers that I co-teach with, what we gained from this is we brought this student work, and after getting feedback and thinking about next steps, it had us creating something else, which is what I really think is cool about collaboration. You see ideas from others and you get to be better because of that process. So really, we kind of quit thinking about this because things people said made us create this, which was cool.
I think they're wanting to go on any questions for them.
So I'm just thinking, backtracking. So from the work with or directed with teachers, because that's one advantage you have, not that you know as well, but there's a lot of other moving parts that you have to deal with on a daily basis. I mean, what type of, I guess maybe I'll just use the word feedback, are you getting from staff as you've gone through this process of designing this?
So I think about, right here, how is the accuracy of this content, thinking about unafraid, how we're going to have students self-assess. So that's where this came from. Where's the self-assessment in this? And there really wasn't. That's what we realized from that. So that's why this was created. We get kids to know that they are learning.
So that's one thing that I always found most interesting at the middle school level is we ask students, actually it's at any level, but former middle school math teacher, we ask students, this is what I want you to do. I want you to achieve at this level. But then we never really talk with the students about what does that look like.
The reflection process is what we did here is for reference.
And there's nothing better than having the students, even having the staff, really do some of that self-reflection. What does it look? What do we want success to look like? What do we expect out of our students? And what are examples of it for us to really think about? What are we teaching for? What is it that we're wanting our students to achieve?
And that's what we're hoping. It's pretty vulnerable that we bring something creative to look at and give you up to that. So we're hoping that as teachers that we're starting to see what really is work success. So is it this or does this even matter? So we're hoping that
And also having that question that we ask ourselves is what I really need to do.
I think also as educators, we have a list of standards that we go through by, but the standards don't necessarily say how you bring those experiences to students so that they can do those things. And so these design labs and design connects, like LPH Home, provides a great opportunity for teachers to share practices, share ideas, and to say, okay, this is the goal here, we really do this, and hey, I have another great idea, or something that we can do this. And we've also saw some other conversations, Mr. Reese has some of our conversation as well. Teachers saying, this reminds me of something going on in my class, and hey, we share students. Doesn't this make sense for us to work together on this and use these experiences with our students? So the power of bringing teachers together to design labs is just unmatched. I think we're very fortunate to have
said earlier on when we were talking about the MOAs, Ms. Barry, is, you know, going to college, you know, we've learned some of the classroom management practices, we've learned some of the content, but until we have that opportunity to apply them, also collaborate with others. And sometimes the hardest thing for any of us as an adult to do is to say, I really don't know, can you help me? And that to me is what you're trying to get staff to do, is say, help me. I want to learn more about this. I want to improve my skill set, the art that I have as a teacher.
More importantly, we're not waiting for them to ask for help. We're there. You're actually part of the conversation. You're starting the conversation. The last thing we want them to be is at the cliff. You're catching them before they're at the edge. And that's what actually stay excited about it as well before they get burned out. I'm excited about it.
It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the process.
That sounds like a proactive approach to it, to allow someone to roll out maybe their lesson plan that they can do.
I think what's going to be even more powerful, like you say, is seeing and hearing what the students see as success. And it looks so different for every kid. I mean, I only have 2 children, and success to them is so different. And we have to remember that we have to recognize that difference in them. Because something that's so simple to one may look simple, but it was such a huge accomplishment. I want to be able to celebrate that for each individual student, that everyone has that opportunity to have success.
Well, I think it's evident by some of the students that saw tonight, something like that. Well, what was it, Ms. Case? 95% was pretty much the running number of we feel that the value were heard. Thank you all. Appreciate all the great work. So moving into item number 7B, Nelson County High School Facility Plan Update. Mr. Ward.
Thank you. So the first thing I'm going to talk about tonight is Nelson County. The Nelson County Community Campus. This is just an update, not an action item, but I would like some comments from the board so that we know how to proceed. We came to you in the beginning of the summer and asked for approval of schematic design of a plan that was primarily renovation of the high school in the existing footprint. When we looked over the summer at the schedule, at the investment in the building that we were making, and all of the goals that we had heard from faculty and community and the board administration, we came to this question: how can we better achieve the things that we've heard from everyone? How can we better address student safety and security, including separation of high school and middle school students? How can we better address compartmentalization opportunities for lockdown events? How could we minimize disruption of learning? What the renovation scheme would require is moving students around the building over the course of multiple years. And on the heels of COVID, that seemed like an unpleasant thing to do to the school. And how could we reduce the interaction between construction activities and student and learning activities? How can we maximize future program opportunities and make better relationships between the campus facilities, better honor traditions on the Nelson County campus, and importantly, how can we make the best value for the money that will be invested in this in the Nelson County project? This was the project that we presented to you at the beginning of the summer. The idea being that it would be renovated renovation within the footprint of the existing high school, including significant reconstruction of a west entrance and lobby and presentation space on this side for the high school, and significant reconstruction of a middle school lobby on that side, and then pretty significant reconstruction of the media center, and then renovation across the whole facility that would touch all the pieces of the facility. What was happening with that, though, is, as we showed you, we were significantly changing the facility. We were making better separations for the middle and high school. We were accommodating most of what the school was asking for. Some exceptions were science facilities were not quite getting renovated as much as we had hoped, and the special ed facilities not quite as much as we had hoped. What I would like some comment about tonight is we would like to propose a different direction, just to see if this can better solve some of those issues. What we have proposed to the faculty, and we've talked to some of the administration about, is reconstruction of the west side of the school, making it new construction instead of renovation construction, outside the existing footprint of the school. So what that would mean is a new two-story facility on the west side of the school. It would connect at D Hall, it would connect back by the cafeteria, and extend from the main hall across. All of the high school classrooms would be accommodated there, including new art classrooms, new science labs, new media center, and the FMD in that area. All of that would then be new construction instead of the 1969 portion of the high school, which is what the high school was going to be renovated in. What that allows logistically is that all of that new construction can happen while school is still going on in the existing high school. It wouldn't disrupt construction in the same way. High school could continue to operate in that existing 1969 footprint and the remainder of the east side of the school while this new construction was being built. And then once the high school could move into the new construction, the existing high school 1969 section could be removed and redeveloped as a central landscape for the whole facility. And then the east side, the gym, the auditorium, that ag area, the cafeteria, and the current freshman could all be renovated at that point. And what we have talked about is the potential that that central area could be developed as an alumni garden, something to recognize past alumni, future alumni, to sort of honor traditions of the school, and that space would be available for activity to spill out of the media center, out of the cafeteria, which would be expanded. It would also become a new way of accessing the gym and auditorium. So we developed just some views of what that could look like. It would be a taller volume, it would be more visible from 62. It would change the current appearance of the sort of low flat structure that you've got. And it would connect better, because it's farther west on the campus, it would connect better to the expanded, renovated up center and allow for much more interaction between those two facilities on the campus. So here's a view of what that could look like with the internal spaces. The lobby of the high school is here, and just next to the lobby on the right would be the media center. On the left would be a new administrative suite, and then extending back would be the classroom. And the classrooms are set up so that they splayed out and can allow for some interactive and collaborative spaces in the middle of those classrooms, so activity can move out of the classrooms for more informal or presentation kind of activity. But what that allows also is that the classroom wing can be separated right at that point. So both upstairs and downstairs, we could compartmentalize the building better. We would also be able to do that back here at the administrative wing and at a couple places along the corridors reaching around the building. So here's that new wing. And zooming in a little bit, this is the front of the high school construction. We have a new secure entry, which Nelson County has never had, where you come into a vestibule and then go into a reception area before you're allowed into the rest of the school. And then immediately to the right would be the media center and a presentation space that could really have a lot of activity and life right there at the entrance. Something like this, a social stair where informal and formal presentations and activities can happen. And as you pass that area into the media center, a lot of the things that we had talked about with faculty and stakeholders in the original renovation scheme, ideas for resource rooms, places where special equipment could happen, a lot of things that have not been in media centers in the past that are becoming more common, like 3D printers and green screens and broadcast, that kind of thing, could happen in this media center. And then in the classroom, again, some more breakout space and presentation space, things that the double-loaded corridors in Nelson County now really don't offer. So coming back to our goals, we think that this reconstruction of the high school section of the building really could better achieve a lot of these goals. It could disrupt learning less over the course of construction, and we propose this as a second path, and one that you can consider looking at this relative to the renovation scheme and give us guidance about how we might move forward.
Okay. I got two things. The first thing I want to know is, will this in any way impact our ball fields?
It will. The very first, so even in the renovation scheme, the goal was always that we would relocate the softball field, the bus maintenance facility, and the bus storage the bus storage that's in the back and the bus lot that's right there in the front. All of that section between the buildings, we were always proposing would be relocated. And that's still true. It's actually more critical that those things be relocated in this scheme because the new construction would be further west on the site. That's what allows the new construction and the up center to have that better coordination between them. So we would have to move softball first.
Okay, because I asked that previously and you told me no. You told me it would not impact me because this is what I saw on the original, that the fields of athletic would be the last thing to be done because of the cost alone. How much is this going to cost? Is it going to be less than what the A plan was, or is this, since it's easier to build than it is to redo, how much is this?
It would be somewhat more, but it is similar in cost to the renovation. We think it's better cost because you're not renovating 50-year-old construction, it would be new construction.
So the athletic facility would be last, as we've said. There's only one field that all plans impact against the softball field, but the athletic facility as a whole was always phase 3 and phase 4.
Yeah, but I asked you, was it going to be any effect on the softball fields, and you told me no.
It's always been
well, it does affect, because that means that softball field will not be replaced for some time, because there will not be the money to do it. I know that. We all know that. By the time that cost goes up 30 to 40%, maybe not that much. I'm just saying. Because we know it's going to be with the inflation deal. I'm just saying how much more is this done. I don't have any problem with it. I told Wes I didn't have any problem with it because to me this is a more secure school than you trying to do something with 13 doors. And my concern is security. Because Yeah, I'm talking about those 13 doors that we talked about last month. I feel more secure with the kids in it than I do the 8 like that first panel. So I don't have any problem with it, but where I have a problem is how much money it's going to cost us, that kind of stuff. Because we know it's going to cost more because you're putting a 2-story in, and plus, like I said, it's easy. Although it is easier to build than it is to redo, tear down and do.
It's about the same amount of square footage, even though it's 2 floors. We did 2 floors so that the walking distances could be less. It is about the same square footage and the same number of classrooms and facilities.
So one of the questions that I've got is, and this has kind of been my approach since day one, 18 or so months ago, is, you know, the staff, the input from that stakeholders group that you've been working with, just like it was with the LPC, is that they're the ones that, you know, provide to us recommendations, you know, what they believe to be the best solutions, the best answers, you know, under the guidance of themselves, under what our expectations were, you know, the security piece, let's try and have a little impact on instruction, you know, the whole bulleted list that you had showed. So kind of what's been some of the feedback, the conversations, what you have heard from that stakeholder group as they started to wrestle with these 2 models?
The stakeholder group we met last week, and they recognized that this did meet their goals better. Everything that they had said to us, this solved those things better than what we were showing them before. And coming out of that stakeholder group, Ms. Sikulski asked us to actually talk to some of the faculty as well beyond that stakeholder group. And without exception, this was preferred over the renovation scheme because of things like the schedule and the sequencing of construction, because it did start to get to the special education and the science and some of the things that we couldn't address in the renovation scheme as well. And because of things like all classrooms having windows, which is not an option in the current Nelson County High School building. So there were a lot of things like that that came up.
Concerns that came from the stakeholder group to stand up?
There were not.
So Stephen met with the whole staff yesterday, met with the committee last week, met with the whole staff in small groups. I think you got to remember, you know, so this Barry brings up a good point, how much does it cost? Well, we don't know exactly how much it costs today. What we can say for sure is that the people in the stakeholder group and the teachers in school are not thinking about 15 or 20% cost in these conversations. They're not thinking about it, right? That's the role of the board to evaluate opportunity cost. And I've said from the get-go in our meetings, my goal is to get the most value for the district. And the last 3 or 4 months, we really had to continue to evaluate opportunity costs, and that's what led to some of these conversations, as I've shared with many of you guys. And I just want to give kudos to Studio Kramer and his team for really thinking critically and creatively around how do we get more value for the district long term, and do that within the constraints of cost. Stephen understands the money that our district currently has and does not have. He knows that. So I just share that to say anything we do has to be designed within those constraints and considering those constraints. What's the future of construction? We don't know. What's it look like in a year from now, 10 years from now? We don't know. What we can say for sure is that that building is currently 53 years old, and that we want to build a next generation facility for students at the Nelson County campus.
I just have a question about the middle school entry. So is the timing, one of the benefits of having the middle school entry separate is making sure they have a secure place to go. So is the timing of that renovation going to be in sync with the high school, or is it dependent on the existing high school footprint being gone?
The latter. the middle school, the whole east side of the main corridor. Basically, you can think about everything on the main corridor. Everything west of main corridor we could do in the first phase project, and everything east of main corridor would be in the second phase project. So the middle school entrance, the middle school media center, which the faculty also like the separation of the media centers. And then some of the amenities here at the hinge point, which would be the expanded clinic that's been talked about for the high school and the Frisk, that would happen in the phase 2 project.
Do we have an idea of what the phase 2?
We assume any project is an 18-month minimum start date. So at the end of that 18 months, in theory, the next phase would begin. It's all about number of variables at play and supply chain, etc. So I think the assumptions from architects and construction managers is 18 months is a targeted goal for construction. That was more realistic in 2019 than it is in 2022.
And that 18 months is per phase, and honestly, that's what scared the faculty about the renovation scheme, was that they were looking at 3 years or more for a renovation, whereas if this were the direction, at least the first phase would be happening while they were still operating in the school as it is.
And I know Ms. Berry brought up a good point, which we're all concerned about, and nobody has a crystal ball when it comes to construction costs. So I know one of the things that we've had discussions as potential comparison, I'll call it the shock factor of what, costs would do, because I know Christian County, I think it is Hawkins, is that Hawkins, I believe? Christian County is proposed to build, their board is proposed to build a new high school. Costs increased quite a bit, and I had an opportunity to talk with one of their district administrators about 2 weeks ago, and it seemed like a huge chunk of that was site prep, which would be moving dirt and rock, which you would think would not be that big of a deal, but depending upon which part of the state you're in, some places have more dirt and more rock that have to be moved than others. I mean, this idea here, yeah, there's still going to have to be some site prep, but I mean, the high school already at campus is pretty level until it starts to drop off right behind us. Yeah, so I mean, and again, you don't have a crystal ball, I'm not asking for it, but I mean, some of these types of things that could be a concern, increased costs, trying to avoid what Christian County encountered, like what you did with Thomas Nelson High School, building into the terrain, the surface, and taking advantage of that. Those are some things potentially we could be looking at.
Right. Yes, they are. To a point, this site does fall off to the northwest. So where the classroom section is, it's one of the reasons we decided to make it a 2-story volume, because it helped us negotiate the grade a little bit. We also, along the length of that new corridor, the new D hall extending from the cafeteria down, we would anticipate probably introducing some ramps along that corridor in order to also follow grade, because a lot of that cost would come as if the floor rises out of grade, and we do a lot of fill and retaining wall and that kind of thing, that's where some costs would come in. So we would follow grade as much as possible.
And so by ramps there, you're talking about what we see sometimes through hallways where there's some level and then a slide, not steps, but a slide incline and level. Is that what you're describing?
Right. And we're doing some of that at Thomas Nelson's design as well, again, to follow grade so that you don't end up paying for a whole bunch of fill.
So tonight really was a conversation just to increase awareness, get some initial feedback. I think one of the things that we heard is continuing to be cognizant of cost, opportunity cost, but cost in general. Any other considerations on this potential strategy?
One thing that was not one of our board items and wasn't really a target, but that as we continued to think about Thomas Nelson, we realized is is a benefit here as well, is that new construction is going to be a tighter thermal envelope. It's going to be new HVAC equipment. We're going to lower operating costs for the facility by building a new facility.
Yeah, my frugal concerns earlier when I saw the change from Plan A to Plan B, that square footage that was there. But in my frugal nature, why get rid of what could potentially be great square footage that is used for galleries or presentation of all of the things that are going on in the district? But as you just mentioned, it costs more to renovate and to upkeep something that's that old. Is more pragmatic.
I can address that. 52-year-old building or 51-year-old building. I was out there when the walls turned green because there's nothing there. You know that. Because you walk down some of those hallways too. Not only that, but the tile would because it's an old system. It never has worked right. But I truly do not have any trouble with this at all. Simply for what I said, and I told you, and I told Superintendent, the security wise. That to me makes a lot more sense than the old Plan A. That's my big idea.
Well, I think mine is more about the construction. I mean, I appreciate the secure separation of middle and high school. I appreciate that. And also not the disruption of those students with construction. If anybody's ever remodeled a home, even a kitchen, it's a disruption. And I can't imagine remodeling that entire space with students in the building. And this, to me, just makes perfect sense to.
We went through the remodel. We went through that remodel with freshman wing. It was a mess.
Forget major.
I mean, it was a mess. Yeah.
Forget major remodels. Just putting a new roof on is enough disruption to a class of students. Been through that one a few times back in the day. So, what is it that you need? I mean, you said one thing you wanted from us. You wanted questions, input, response, thoughts of ours. I mean, what else do you need from us at this point?
That is all I need at this point. It's something that we are exploring with the district. We wanted to get a sense of whether this direction seemed like a good direction to pursue. We're not yet at a place where we would ask you for schematic design approval. We haven't gotten there. But before we spend more time on this direction, we wanted to know that generally it was a positive.
That it's intriguing. That it could be an answer to meet some of these bullet points. The only thing that I'll ask, and this is probably more so for Superintendent Bradley, of course, the local planning committee, they kind of set down, here's what they saw as the vision over the next however many years for facilities within the community. And out of that, there was an initial set of, I'll just call them drawings. I don't know if that's the right term, but there weren't the schematics yet, like we approved for Thomas Nelson a month ago. Is there anything that would have to be done? And it's not necessarily an answer that has to be given tonight, but let's make sure that there's nothing that has to be done with the LPC, or if this school falls within that original recommendation and approved LPC.
We're exploring the logistics of that a little bit. This still does what we said we wanted to accomplish with the district facility plan. Whether there's some logistical things we need to work out with KDE is we still need to determine that. Now that we're at this point, and it seems like it's generally positively received, we can have those conversations.
So there is a potential based on our conversations that KDE would ask for us to do that, to change probably a couple words or phrases, and the potential cost implicated. So, and that's something we can do. We were asked to do that.
Okay. Anything else from Mr. Ward on this one?
So Stephen undertold this. The committee was very positive. The staff was very positive about this conversation. And I think that they see these things as well. The $12 million we're spending at the Up Center as a part of the grant allows us to really unite these buildings in a way, not only from a physical standpoint, architecturally, but just a common sense design approach and more economical connectedness between those buildings that we've ever had before. So, sure, it could cost more money, and any new building like this is likely to cost more, but we still have to look at the long-term value. We don't want to put $25 million into something that's not the right long-term investment. That's why we want to step back and pause. It would have been much easier with the politics of all the things that are going on right now to not step back and just to say, well, let's keep moving on. This is a plan. We don't want to go back and talk to people about it. The reality is, every plan we have to continue to step back and ask, is this the right decision? And are we getting the right opportunity cost and value for our kids and our community? So,
I use the used car analogy there. Eventually gets to a point where you can either keep on investing money into that car and keep it going, or there is a point where you go, it's time, it's time to buy the car. The band did that too. Okay. So then, no action is needed on this. You have, I guess, marching orders, so to speak.
Enough
guidance and some thoughts from the board members. So then our next item is 7C, Thomas Nelson High School Facility Plan Update.
I can be quick about this. Thomas Nelson, we are asking tonight for approval of design development. What we've done since the schematic design approval a few months ago is we've made revisions to the scheme to eliminate the storm shelter once Housing, Buildings and Construction told us that that would not be a requirement for this facility. We developed the gym and field house so that it can serve better as a community facility. We did introduce a clinic to the Thomas Nelson facility, but the key piece that we're here to talk about tonight is that we engaged all of our structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers over the last few months to really dig in and get to a more detailed level of design for Thomas Nelson. So we are ready to begin construction documents, and we want to ask you if it's appropriate for us to move on. Just some reminders. So what's proposed is that the addition would come off of the north side of Thomas Nelson High School. It would have a gym, field house, a lobby, and the middle school classroom addition would be here. There would be a new entrance for the middle school section of the building on the north side, and it would be served by an additional drop-off drive just off of 245. And then it would have a middle school field just across Generals Boulevard. The goal of the addition is really to use the same palette of materials and the same design language that's at the high school now so that it feels all complementary. And then this is a view of that new entrance from the north side where the classroom wing is to the left, the gym is to the right, and that's the new entrance from the north, which would be a discrete middle school entrance separate from the high school entrance. There's a plan, so if you go to the link in the presentation, you'll see that there's a whole lot of sheets that look like this, and that's the actual design development document that we will be sending to KDE. It's 50 plus sheets at this point, now that all the engineering sheets have been involved, but this is the plan that we're proposing. And it gets into a level of detail now where we've got sections through the building in various places. We've got areas of the building that are blown up. We've gotten into the routing of electrical and mechanical and plumbing throughout the building. And all of that is resolved to a point where we can now move on to the construction documents. Over the course of this, we've continued to have the stakeholder meetings, so we've, in order to illustrate the pretty dry black and white drawings that we're going to send to KDE, we've started to do And we've been ongoing doing renderings for that stakeholder meeting so they understand what we're proposing. So this is the lobby, just some views of the lobby. In this case, this is just after you've come in that middle school entrance. There's the entrance to the gym on the right, some collaborative learning spaces in the lobby itself, including some nooks off to the left, and over your left shoulder would be the entrance into the classroom. And this is looking back that direction. So you're looking back at the entrance, and down to the right would be the classroom wing. And then we've gotten more into discussions about how the gym would be configured, and we've started to show some views of how that could look. It's designed to seat the full student body and faculty, so it would be just over 500 or so that would be accommodated for the middle school area. And we also have gotten into some detailed conversations now about how classrooms would work. So the standard classrooms throughout the classroom wing are set up to be paired, so that there could be co-teaching, and there would be a movable partition between those classrooms. We've gotten now into discussions of what millwork would be required and what kind of instructional technology and that kind of thing. So all of those conversations have begun to happen now. There's a view of two classrooms joined together where that movable partition is. And then, as I think we presented in the schematic design, there are open collaborative learning spaces throughout, mainly in the middle of the classroom wing, between classrooms, so that activity can spill out into those. You can have presentation. The room in the distance there, we kind of jokingly call a wet and messy space. It's sort of a project build space. And then there's another one of those on the far side. And then this is in the end of the building, and what we've talked about is sort of a commons space at the end of the building. Basically, it's where the classroom wing ends. So that's the last classroom on this side, there's a classroom on this side, and this is just the gathering space at the end. And the last thing I'll talk about real quick is the introduction of the clinic. We had a lot of conversation about where the clinic could go, and a key piece of it is that the future of the clinic is that it would serve folks coming into the building, so we have to be careful about where entrance would work. And basically what we've set up is by using part of the former media center, we can have entrance to the clinic be off the vestibule, and nobody coming to the clinic from outside is given access to the building at all. You just get into the clinic from the vestibule, and you can't get into the secure part of the building. So the part outlined there is where we've proposed the clinic, and we've worked with Felicia to organize that, and as well as Mr. Merrifield, to organize that so they can serve their needs. And that's what I have to present. The documents are in their link, and we'd like to send those to the Department of Education with your authorization.
So then are there questions by the board members about any of this, I'll call it more detailed set of drawings and schematics that Mr. Ward shared with us? So then we would need a motion to approve the Thomas Nelson High School design development as has been presented. Motion by Mr. Dickerson. Second by Ms. Hollingshead. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Appreciate it. Very, very exciting time. Moving on into 7D, BG5, Thomas Nelson High School land. Ms. Rogers.
Easy under taxes and budgets. This is just asking that you approve the BG5 so that we can close out the land purchase with the state.
So this is, I just call it a formality. The property's already been purchased, but this is just something the state asks submission on behalf of the district to say we're finished with the project. it lists the purchasing price of the land in there, and that's it. It's not a real involved process. I do want to reiterate, as we look at this design of the Thomas Nelson Middle School, this land purchase of $625,000 probably saved us upwards of $1.5 million of destroying things on the other side of the property. So I would say one of the best investments that we could possibly make, and more than will pay for itself, and add great value to that land for the next 30 years.
So then this here, this closes out that particular DG set of documentation.
It does, yes.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Rhodes?
It was one of the easiest things we had to do.
Usually it is, yes. So we need a motion to approve DG 5-22-386, the Thomas Nelson High School Community Campus land as has been presented. Motion by Mr. Dickerson. Second by Ms. Bowe. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Roy.
Thank you.
You did a good job. Thank you.
Moving on into item number 8, board calendar. It looks like Superintendent Bradley, the next 3 months are months with single board meetings that have already been planned and announced, correct?
So you see in October there we have open Olympic school. November we have off and we have another 13. We don't expect any changes to policy, potentially some changes.
But these are the scheduled one per month for the next 3 months. Last agenda item number 9, board celebrations. So again, as board members, as we possibly are around a school district or even community things that we possibly come across, I want to make sure to share it all. I'm sorry. Oh, if there are some powerful examples that we want to share and highlight.
Yes, these folks, my folks, seem to be overlooked a lot of times, but I give gratitude to folks such as Laura Mann, work that she's been doing. Jill, Hal, is the ongoing program, awards program. These things aren't all that well. They're just there under the surface. Mom sales, Shannon Malls, World's Finest Chocolate Program, Jessica Techart, and 13, I forget the exact people, but the community partners in the new deal. I think there were 13 of them just in August alone, nearly $1,300 they raised for the basketball team. And these little big tidbits are really noted and appreciated. So, secondly, I want to acknowledge and applaud the cohesive work between the school system in Bardstown, independent with every opportunity to goes without saying, as we saw earlier, the fruits of that labor. So, something Ms. Case mentioned earlier, the others that belonging, it struck me that I would imagine that in years past or decades past that you gave the same survey, I would not get 95% of the kids in schools to say that they felt essential, felt love, felt part of the team, maybe more rough way to go. So I think it's pretty safe to say with a lot of our situation as far as the perspective and the kids that we have today. But I want to leave out our commitment to the increased pay we give the Nesson County employees across the board the past couple of years. We're celebrating. The potential of the specialization, if you will, for early learning in middle and high school, the facility plans that we proposed, I think is enormous. KA education is difficult to be all things to all people, and to allow our littles to be attended to in the respective municipalities, and allow junior high school, middle school, where we all want to be focused on and allowed to grow and be allowed to give time space to delve into what that gift from the big guys are going to be for them is lastly, so glad to be a part of this volleyball house, so thanks so much.
Well, I mean, I'll just share, this is some very specific gratitude. I think about the work that is led by a lot, especially Ms. Henderson, Ms. Newton, Ms. Arnold. What we saw in Mayo earlier this month, Doodles by Rebecca, the young man who was doing the CNC work and was being given more opportunities. In fact, I think like Baptist was trying to snipe him from a competing company to get him to come and work at Mayo. And I say that in a positive way, all due respect and affection. I think that shows that what we're starting to do as a school district is really give our students the opportunities that they've been needing for so long. We always hear about the conversations of, oh, every kid isn't made for college. That's true, we all know that. And there are some students that are made for college that don't want college. And, you start to talk with some of these high school students that are having these, I know that we slightly changed my work-based learning. We're now referring to more as profession-based thinking, profession-based experiences. And whenever we start to talk with those students, we really get to hear from them what they're getting out of these opportunities. The student that goes, I was planning on doing this, but I think I want to be an early childhood educator. I don't know how many of them this is because of opportunities through the Early Learning Center. Whether it was when you were leading that or even now that are saying, I think that's kind of what I want to do. And I believe that's what we all have to keep in view and in sight of, is that really, it's not about what I want or what Mr. Dickerson wants or what Mr. Roberts wants, but being able to find what it is that's going to make these students have opportunities presented to them. And I want to thank the three of you in particular, but I know it's many more that actually provide those chances for our students to explore and to learn and to find what it is that their true passion is. I always enjoy hearing students talk about, I now think I know what I want to do, and maybe they'll change minds again, but they're being given the opportunity. So I appreciate you all's efforts on that.
Well, as a financial analyst, I want to thank Ms. Owens and Ms. Rogers for all of the work put into the presentation today. I'm well aware of how much that takes and paying attention to the numbers and then being able to so clearly articulate what those numbers mean so that we all learn and can understand. I do really appreciate your time and effort.
Well, I'm shifting gears to the volleyball team at Nelson County High School. They've got an outstanding record, so anytime you all would like to come out and watch them, please do so.
That's one of your passions is volleyball. It comes from the daughter days.
It comes from the granddaughter plays college at Union College. So that's it. But I go out there and watch those kids, and it's just great to watch kids that love to play a sport and that they go to school to play that sport. And the majority of them have to have a certain grade point average to play that sport. And that's what I appreciate too, is that alone parents see a value in the sport, but they also see a value in having their son or daughter make the grade. So that's what I hung over my kid's head, and I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to hang it over there too much, but I love it. Love it. Yes, it is. It's another opportunity. My granddaughter got a scholarship to play. Not only on brains, but on her ability, and that's what I wish for all sports students. We're student athletes. It doesn't make any difference what you want to call them. If they got the opportunity, they're going to take it. So, that's it.
I do not want to take any more time because I am so grateful that you guys have sat through a nearly 3-hour meeting. From our guests being here and speaking their voice and having an opportunity to do that, as well as the people that are in our be part of the conversation. I want to brag a little bit on the Boston girls basketball team, undefeated, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Again, if you were out that way, they're playing, I think, actually they were playing tonight, I did not get to go to that. But they're doing a fantastic job. Also, real quick, we had an opportunity to meet with some FFA leaders within the schools, and as well as some of the community partners that we have with FFA. Barton Forest was there, some of our local farmers. That was a powerful conversation going on about what opportunities that we're looking for in the next generation of students. And it was great to hear how excited they are about the programming and how great the FFA is representing Nelson County. And it's becoming a strong program, and I'm going to say it again because I think there was a time there was a little bit of separation, but they are feeling the energy, and we need to remember to continue to support that energy and get them going as much as we can. And the Back to School Bash in Boston was a few weeks ago, and it was awesome to see people back celebrate the start of the school year. It's been a long time since we were able to do that with everything that's happened, but it was great to see our kids and our parents back and being part of something that used to be such a big part of the start of the school year, and we missed it for so long. It was so nice to be back and enjoying those families, and I feel like I didn't know half of the people anymore because I've been so far removed not being in the building, and it's great to be back in and be part of what's going on in our schools. And like I said, thank you for being here tonight and taking the time to be part of everything that's going on in Wilson County.
Going back to your FFA, is the state FFA president? Where's Ben Williams going to high school? Yeah. So I think that just shows the type of program that we are.
These kids are outstanding. Outstanding. And not just that, the people that are helping them, the teachers and the staff, that are doing a fantastic job. And I think the guy, OKH, FFA guys, oh my God. Figure out which one he's amazing. So I look forward to one day being offering those same programs to kids from New Haven and Boston, because that's something that we're missing, and I cannot wait that we get to offer something that these kids are not having the opportunity to. I can't wait. Actually, I talked to them a little bit about how to do that now.
So, moving on in item 10, last item, I will need a motion to adjourn the regular session of the Board of Education. Motion by Ms. Berry.